Yes, excellent. Welcome everyone. Thanks so much indeed for joining us for another packed installment of FyneConf. It is amazing to be here in sunny Berlin. I can't blame anybody who decided that outdoors was better than indoors this afternoon, but it is of course about quality, not quantity. So I hope that you've brought some open minds to be inspired and a notebook full of questions to help us fix up your concerns, apps, or help you get started with the project in some way. It's great to be able to see a growing community, and with more and more people coming along each year, hopefully, we can see something really fantastic come together here. Online is one thing, but there's just no alternative to getting together. So thank you for taking the journey or the cross the street to be here with us today. Apologies for everybody joining us online. We love you guys as well. Please do enjoy and get involved. But before then, I've got just one moment that's going to bore you because we've got a little logistics to deal with for people in the room. I need to cover some important health and safety. Let's start with Wi-Fi. It is available there. The wireless name is FyneConf 2024, and you can get the password of #FyneConf_2024. Do use it to take pictures, tweet about everything that's amazing, or ask your questions along the way, and we'll try to get to everything. More seriously, there are no fire alarms expected, so if an alarm does go off, we will all uniformly head in that general direction towards the door, but stewards will help us out of the building. We are in a bank and need to respect that it's a secure environment. Toilets are out that door there on your right-hand side, and we are live streaming. So that, I think, is the logistics. For anybody that I have not met before, hi, my name's Andrew. I started Fyne over 6 years ago. I have been a software engineer for, I think, over 2 decades commercially, and have experience previously with the Maven project, Enlightenment, and on a bit of a curveball, was recently appointed the chair of the board of directors for Scotland's digital technology trade body. So that's an interesting overlap to see. We're all thinking, where is the future of this industry and how do we get it there? Thanks very much for the speakers who've contributed to today. We've got people from around the community that are going to be contributing. Fantastic to the people who could make it in person. Others are contributing remotely. Due to personal situations, the remote speakers have pre-recorded, and so we're not going to have a live Q&A with anybody that's coming in remotely, but we could still have a spirited discussion in the room. But first, a little bit of a reminder, particularly to anybody who is new to the community. The app building landscape, as I'm calling it, is confusing, to put it mildly. Perhaps it is a little treacherous, as the landscape illustration is aiming for. There's a lot of great commercial efforts there. People shout about the importance of UX, but they will show you how to do it for their platform. These companies want you to help their ecosystem rather than to make the world a better place for everyone. It is, I find it quite complex to get started with the general concept. You need to all the tools to build it. You've got a lot to learn, and in some situations you actually have to have specific hardware to be even invited to the party. There's a lot of cross-platform efforts. I wish I had maybe $1.50 for each time somebody asked me, but doesn't this exist already? Legacy languages are not what we want to be using, and they have drawbacks, not least of all that your application may have to have runtime installed or system set up to even execute out of the box, which of course is not really something that people are going to be excited about. And some of the better projects, some of the more popular ones even, have really low-level APIs. They make it possible to do amazing things, but to get started with something that looks good out of the box is not kind of what they're aiming for. And lastly, I include this just for completeness. You could use the web, which is great for some things, sharing documentation, data, all of those things, great, and it is the right platform for those, but it may not be the right way to build a user interface for a native application that you're going to take with you. Which is to say, there was a project needed, and that is why Fyne was started. I have in my head the idea that we can build something much, much better, that we can be the best toolkit for easily developing beautiful, native graphical applications for desktop and for mobile and many other platforms which may even get spoken about later today. It tries to be the toolkit we deserve. Now, I'm going to assume that most people here know, therefore, why this is important and have perhaps tried it. You're going to be able to write something once and have it compile for all different devices. These applications are just going to work. There's no setup, no complicated communications, and no delivering files alongside your application. We don't even need installers. We're going to be using modern techniques and the Go programming language, which helps everything come together, because we know there is generally a best way to do things, and Go helps us ignore the stuff that doesn't matter and focus on the things that does. All of this is lowering the barrier to entry so that absolutely anybody can get into building applications with whatever their experience level, and they can build something that looks good by default. And even if this is the first time you're programming, you're going to start from best practice, people showing you how things could be, should be, perhaps hint at the right direction to take your code as you learn. Anyhow, apologies if anybody has heard that before. I feel like I say that every month or two for the last 5 years, but I think it's still fundamentally important, and hopefully a few people agree, or we wouldn't be chatting about it today. But really, this first session this afternoon was for me to take an opportunity to tell everybody what is new in the Fyne universe. What have the team been working on? What's been delivered since FyneConf 2023? For anybody who was there, it's not that far away, but the other side of the water. The weather was nowhere near as glamorous, although there was blue sky, which of course there always is in Edinburgh. It's a beautiful city. For everybody joining us for the first time, this is a bit of a catch-up, I suppose, you might have seen online. Anyhow, it has been an exceptionally busy year for the team. We had, I believe, 6 releases were delivered, and that includes the 2.5 series. It started with version 2.5.0, which was hundreds and hundreds of fixes. The word did not seem to align there. It included hundreds of fixes and loads more features as well. The community keeps on growing online. I don't know if you actually judge anything by GitHub stars or not, but we increased by about 3,000 more. The number up there is already out of date because I only updated it yesterday. We are just short of 25,000, but I'm going to enjoy a nice cool beer this evening no matter what. I use this graph to illustrate that the growth is continuing, and I'd like to put it in context with some of the other projects, which is not to do a direct comparison, but just to indicate the type of growth speed that you can expect for a project of this type, of this size. It takes years to get going, but to keep growing after those years, I think, is what indicates that you're capturing people who didn't used to work in this space and are excited about where it's going. We did reach, oh no, we didn't. We almost reached, like 2 away, I think, the next 1,000 for YouTube subscribers. So 2,000 would have been a real milestone. The one that we did, excuse me?
You can reach it today.
Oh, yes. Please do help us. If you're watching us on YouTube, or if you aren't yet, how would you be hearing this? Please do subscribe, and we can celebrate that one this evening. And even if that doesn't work, we can celebrate that across the different social media platforms, not including video and live streaming. We do have 1,000 followers, so that's across the various different channels on Discord, Matrix, Slack, and various others, which I'll mention. So thanks to everybody who's following us, but also to the people who are on the social media, being part of the community and helping others out along the way. Lastly, online, we've had a tremendous growth of about 30% on the apps listing website. So this is open source applications that people are wanting to share with each other to promote their work and also to help others to understand what's possible. And we have, this year, had more conferences than ever before. It's exhausting, but it's really exciting. We have broken into some of the more major Go conferences. In fact, I believe that Go Singapore is now the only headline Go conference that Fyne has not been presented at. And partly, that I think is just because they pushed their dates from September out to January, so hopefully we can get that resolved in the context of the wider year. And I will come to a little bit later, Fyne is being used in more different places than ever before. And I don't mean geographically on the other side of the river as well as this side. Apologies for the political statement, that was not supposed to. No, not just in the neighboring buildings or the ones that you're surrounded by, but by exciting new platforms that are coming together. So to talk a little bit about this 2.5 major release that came together, in case you're not familiar with some of the functionality, we added localization. There's a bunch of new widgets and containers that are going to help to pull together more exciting applications, and improved support for Wayland and web deliverables. I'm going to come back to those in a moment. Also, we included the ability to look up system fonts automatically. So instead of users in Japan complaining that your app that you've tested only in a Latin alphabet of some sort doesn't work, it will do if their system is appropriately configured, which it will be because they have the fonts that they need. So we're now delegating to the platform. Due to fantastic contributions from the community, we've got undo, redo in entry, and that kind of improvement to lots and lots of widgets across the entire toolkit. But to come back to some of those headline ones, I wanted to mention, or rather talk through some of the details for translation and localization. It's kind of new for us. It's also not standardized across Go, so we had to look at this carefully. Obviously, it's covering multiple different languages. We've introduced some new APIs for understanding locale and user configuration for their current preferences. I was going to say location, it's not quite right, it covers more than that, and as was discussed over lunch, there are many, many different versions of English, some of which do or don't call themselves English, so we're helping to understand that and deliver a good experience for your users. The font lookup is really essential to this. It means that if you include languages that your app hasn't bundled, which we don't want to because some fonts are massive, we can use the system fonts, and so these work quite well together. And we are working towards full internationalization, step by step. Now, one thing this slide is saying is not, oh, he's reading it, it's not well prepared. It's saying, actually, this was in last year's presentation. This is what we were going to do for you, and this is what has been delivered. So for once, I feel quite glad that I could just take, here's our plan, here's what we delivered, which is amazing. A little bit of the details, though, to get stuck into what this means. There is a new package called Lang, unsurprisingly, that is going to deliver language features. The simplest way to get started is just to mark your text for translation. There are super short function names, just for brevity, called L, N, X, and XN, which I'll explain. They are short forms of the longer methods, which I'll go into here. L means localize, which is essentially translate this piece of text for me. You tell it the string that you would like to have translated into a language, and then the toolkit is going to put the right thing in there for you. Then there is X, or localize key. The naming was collaborative with a few people who know how these things work, so X makes sense in the grand scheme of things, where the text isn't enough information to get the right string. So we have a key that's going to be looked up. This is really useful for ambiguous phrases, pieces of text, or more complex scenarios that we'll look at a little. So here we have a new message that greets users of your application, and we give it a sensible default. In the first case, it will default to what's given, and it will look up the translation using the same text. And these also accept information about what data can be put into that. So using the same method as the format package and the sprintf, or printf, you can drop data in using placeholders, and any number of items of data can be included there. And that goes for both of the above. And the other two, which are LN and XN, which is pluralized forms of those two. So this may seem unimportant, and if it doesn't matter to you, it might not matter to you, or it might mean that you don't know quite the complexity that some languages that you're not familiar with have. Now, I used an example here which I think makes sense to anybody familiar with English. You might want to localize the string friends, but you realize that sometimes it's only one friend. For good reasons, I'm sure. In this case, we want to indicate or put into our user interface friends, but when there's only one, and I've hard-coded it here, we want actually the system to go friend. And so that method there, the pluralized forms, allow you to specify multiple strings, And in different languages, you can have different numbers or different turning points for those localized pluralities. I'm no expert, but we're assured it works. There haven't been many people saying it needs more at this stage, so pretty excited that that's delivered on what people needed. To get data into your application, there are various different APIs added. I'm not going to go into them all, but suffice to say they all start add translations. You can add them one by passing a resource to that function. You can add them in bundles. You can use mounted file systems using the built-in Go functionality for handling multiple files in a directory. And these use a JSON format. We decided not to go with the C-based common function formats that people understand because, I mean, how many parsers of different languages do you want inside one toolkit? And everybody who's using Go pretty much understands JSON. And there was a really excellent Go I18N project established, and we found that most of the online translation tools supported it. So we went with that, and it looks like this. You can see the first 5 are the simple versions of a translation where it's unambiguous. This is obviously the English file. They're basically identical. And then further down, we've got the disambiguation, so where name and parent could differ across different contexts. We've specified that this relates to the file. And if you wanted to use pluralized forms, you would put them under there with the key being the number that it was pluralized for. And all of these could be format specifiers rather than plain strings. Cool, okay. I hope that really helps. I realized when we were preparing this that the documentation in this area is a little bit light, so this slide may translate directly into some documentation later in the week. But now onto something a little bit more graphical. Actually, a little different is what I have in my slides for the fans out there of Monty Python. So we have a few containers that were added. Theme override is a new one that a lot of people may have been screaming out for, but didn't realize. A chance for your application to look different in a certain area, which could be to differentiate between content that you're editing and the tools that your user interface is formed by, or to preview something that's going to change that is a standard widget, but you want to influence the output of. So I have a simple example. Honestly, it's simple. A little slides application there that I've put together using Markdown on the left, which it renders on the right. That's an example there of where you might want to have a differently styled element of your application. Next up are 2 new containers called inner window and multiple windows. An inner window, apologies for anybody who knows my approach to naming, is for putting one window inside another. It will allow you to float content around. The user can move and resize and close this as they want, with callbacks familiar if you've ever done any window handling at the outer level. But more interesting is when you combine it with multiple windows, because then you can have lots of different inner windows stacking on top of each other, and the user can also maximize, minimize, and do more complex handling. So if anybody was really sad that they used to do MDI applications on Windows and just nothing could do that anymore, this is an opportunity for you to revive 25-year-old code base and feel that it's happier. Obviously, there are some challenges here. If you're trying to squeeze all that onto a small smartphone, you may have some challenges, and we have not automatically done anything. It's an MDI interface. That's kind of what it's built for. A couple of smaller widgets that have also been added. A new activity widget, sometimes called a spinner or a throbber, depending on your interface, is going to just indicate that something's happening. It can be inline, like the first line, just to let people know, or it could be... I'm glad I didn't still have my ear playing the live stream, or that would have been 3 of me at once, and that would have been way too much. You could also have that overlay on a button if, for example, you wanted to block the user from progressing in a situation until the activity was resolved. Grid wrap, from another of our team members who couldn't be here today, is like the grid wrap layout that you might have used in a container before, but it has the optimizations of list built in. So that window there, which is showing 9 files with pretty short names, could be showing you the top of a directory with thousands and thousands of items in it. But you can scroll through at speed, as you would expect from a performant user interface. So the widget there taking advantage of caching and the advanced scroll capabilities that a container, being a fairly straightforward object, can't. And 25 new widget APIs, not 25 new widgets, but things that people have been asking for. Things like hiding separators in the collections, adding text style to items within a text grid for lower level kind of coder interfaces, things like that. And we've also made sure that disableable is supported across a wider range of widgets like slider. Toolbar action, it should pretty much be everywhere that you'd expect now. I think that goes for the sort of feature additions in terms of things that you might see inside your application. Now for feature additions that show the entire application in new places. The web driver is now pretty complete. It's fully functional if you're not doing file I/O with local files. We're still working on that. The technology that we're built on top of isn't quite there, and we're hoping that WASI might be the solution, so we held off a little longer. That should be resolved in the next release. But for now, your application, apart from file access, is going to work completely, including all of the new widgets you see. This is the Fyne demo running in a browser window. You would get that. It says localhost because I was playing around, but if you go to demo.fyne.io, you will see the WebDriver in action. So that's great. You can finally just use that in your own application with the Fyne CLI that you might be familiar with. Just type Fyne serve, and it will tell you that the server files are being served, where to go with your browser. We also have Wayland support is now in, which is great. That is working very nicely. It is one step away from being on by default. You need to use tags Wayland in your compile to tell it that it should be turned on, because again, the technology we're using doesn't currently auto switch appropriately, and for most distributions where people aren't sure how the Linux is configured, it's probably X, so that's still the default. Again, in the next version, we expect to advance that and it will auto switch, but for now, use the parameter. That's just a lovely Wayland window containing a lovely music player by Drew, another one of our contributors, which is cool. Actually, it seems to be a project that people love to get involved in, because Thilo's first project with Fyne was a music player as well. So it's a nice chance to bring in a bit of graphics and listen to good music at the same time. And lastly, the mobile experience has been quite well enhanced. Content is going to adjust to the space on screen, so you no longer get the keyboard occluding things or having to figure out how to adjust it. It's going to handle everything out of the box a lot better, which I think has helped to expand where Fyne is being used. We have instances of applications that are standard builds that are being used on non-standard or non-familiar devices. So this is our demo Solitaire app running on a Steam Deck, which is pretty cool. If anybody's interested and have one at home and it's in a cupboard gathering dust, I can now tell you how to get really top-notch AAA category games running on that user interface. Very, very easy, same code base as your Fyne app for everything else. And also Linux Phone is really coming together nicely. Not only are the applications better set up, because most of the Linux phones are Wayland. So last time I used that word, apologies if it means nothing to you, don't worry. But also that includes one of the community members who has their phone running Fyne Desk with Fyne apps on top of that. So they have the full graphical stack running in Fyne, much like I do on my coding laptop when I'm not working with Apple's beautiful products. We've also seen it adapted to run on new architectures and strange new devices, like industry sensors. That's a Fyne app, which kind of blew my mind when somebody pointed it out to me. You can purchase that online if you're into industrial sensors and you've got some cash to throw at them. And one that I was really excited about is the remarkable paper now has been shown running Fyne apps. These have required a little bit of modification, but with a little bit of interest in the space, we might find that things like that become part of the core package as well. But we are always looking to find out more what's going on around the community and what people are excited about. So please do tell us what you are working on. Share your apps, whether it's with the community or somebody that you bump into in the street, because people are more into app development than you realize. So do tell everybody about Fyne. I don't know if anybody noticed it, but there was a bit of a meme not so long ago where Microsoft did a survey of, in 0 to 10, how likely are you to recommend Windows to a colleague? Somebody responded to them and said, "I'm sorry, Microsoft, but you don't understand. People don't go around recommending operating systems." And somebody comments, "Okay, Linux, hold my beer." So yeah, folk are really into toolkits and graphical advancements and technologies like that. Joking aside, the community is really excited to see and be inspired by what's going on. We've got a growing FyneX repository, which if you're not familiar with, is like the toolkit, but enhancements from the community. New widgets, new layouts, new dialogues. And be part of the chat channels, join one of our servers, talk to other developers, and we will come back to that a little bit more later on. But all of that is to say, welcome to FyneConf 2024. I say with my best Tony Stark voice. We have had a morning of contributor discussions, which was very fruitful and enjoyable. Thanks everybody who came along for that. And we have an afternoon of great presentations. We're going to finish up with an AMA or QA session that's open to everybody. We're not going to be live streaming that portion because it's a bit awkward. So do get your questions in early if you're online, but we will answer anything that comes in from that channel to the channel it came from, if that makes sense. And other than that, if you're remote, ask questions as we go. We'll try and catch them at the end of each presentation. If you're in the room, I think people generally are preferring if you hold questions until the last slide so that we know where things are with timing. And there's an opportunity, an ample opportunity to ask more questions at the end of the event, where if we finish early, we get more light refreshments. We have to thank very much Just Relate and Fyne Labs for their sponsorship today. Without it, it wouldn't be possible to be here. Just Relate are the banners that you see on either side of us. They've kindly helped out. It's the company that Thilo works at. He will tell you more about it, but we don't have slides to tell you about it right now. But do go and find out about them, pick up a sticker, or again, tell your friends. I mean, you know, it's all good. Yeah, we have stickers floating around. They're excellent stickers. I ran out of FyneLab stickers, which were cool. They said, "Build the future." I think there's probably one on my laptop over here if you're in the room. Next time you see me, I'll have a stack of them if that helps. Sorry. They are a software business that has various products, but you know, targeted at medium-sized enterprises kind of thing. So Thilo didn't want to sell you anything today, which is fine. I work at Fyne Labs. I also don't want to sell you anything today, but I do want to tell you that we do everything we can to make sure that the community is moving forward as the voice it needs to gather new members. And we also build some pretty cool software aimed at smaller or earlier stage businesses, and I can tell you more about it later, but there will be a presentation that incorporates it. And we're doing some pretty cool things with build automation and also low code, which definitely will come up later on. That is everything from me. Welcome and thanks everybody. I think, timing-wise, we're running super behind. So I'm just going to prepare to march on with our first guest presentation who's joining us remotely, but is pre-recorded because he was unavailable at this particular time. If there's any burning questions, I could take one or two right now. Otherwise, I'll just move on to the presentation.
Can I have a bit of like implementation technical question, if you just aware of? So I was interested in this, like the render of for the web, Fyne on the web. So do you know what is the underlying technologies? Is it just HTML or is it maybe Canvas being rendered with pixels?
Yeah, so the question is about the web driver and the implementation. The stack that we're using is the binary as a WebAssembly that's being output by our packager, and we are connecting to the WebGL. So we are using an OpenGL renderer, but there's three variants. We've got standard OpenGL, WebGL, and GLES, which obviously share a tremendous amount of code between them. And so our web build is essentially setting up the runtime that allows us to execute the same shaders. So that's the process at the moment. We did explore Canvas or a DOM-based approach, but the idea of writing an entire driver for one platform was a little bit daunting, so we left it where it is for now. Okay. So I need to prepare for our presentation from Rinaldi, who is in Australia. Says hello to everybody. He was a presenter last year as well, so a few people might have seen him. But he sends his apologies. He had to deal with a few things, and he sent this video ahead. So I'm going to juggle.
Hello everyone. Hope everyone's having a great day at Fyne Conference 2024 so far. My name is Rinaldi, and today I'll be bringing you through my talk, Dynamic Data Visualization with Fyne and Go, Creating Interactive Dashboards. So without further ado, let's jump right in. So, a bit about myself. I am a software engineer and AWS consultant. I currently hold all foreign certifications from AWS, and I'm an AWS community builder. I'm also an instructor and author, currently writing the Azure AI Engineer Associate Study Guide. Have been an international speaker and at over 50 events and conferences. I'm currently the organizer of the Melbourne Python Meetup, and I enjoy all things AWS, open source, generative AI, and virtual reality. So let's go a bit into the agenda. We'll be covering 5 main items today. First, we'll understand a bit more about Fyne and Go. Essentially, understanding a bit more about how Fyne is used within Go. Then, we'll talk a bit about designing and coding up the dashboard. So essentially, gaining a bit more understanding about how we would like to design the dashboard in such a way that we could make it the way we intended it to for the purposes of our particular session, of course. And third, we'll then talk a bit more about styling the dashboard so that we can make it, well, like a professional dashboard. Fourth, we'll talk a bit more about the data handling aspects. And finally, we'll talk about the key takeaways from the talk. So, to start off with, let's have a bit of more understanding Fyne and Go. So, Fyne leverages Go's concurrency model. So, essentially, it should come as no surprise considering that we're all Fyne practitioners already, but pretty much it leverages it, and essentially, this is a simple function-based approach for building UI. So as you can see over there, like we can pretty much just spin up a simple hello world and just essentially create a my window that way. So we can pretty much get the window to show up and run it. And this is essentially what we will be building on today. This is the foundations of what we'll be building on. And why Fyne in particular for data dashboards? Well, firstly, it's lightweight. Fyne apps are performant and resource efficient. It's customizable. There are different components that we can easily put in and accordingly adjust based on our requirements. So this could be from widgets, from sliders, a lot. We can easily adapt these UI elements for our specific needs. It's cross-platform. We can develop once and essentially run on any platform, which is a very versatile way of being able to interoperate with many different platforms that oftentimes we don't see, and which this is why it is a very powerful solution. Designing a dashboard itself has the goal of having the real-time data visualization with the user interaction. It's all about how we can essentially have users view the data in real time and interact with the data. That is something that oftentimes a lot of different consumers search for such a data solution, and it's not always the most straightforward way. So we can actually achieve this with Fyne. And we can achieve this with very minimal components, and this could be in this particular case, charts, sliders, checkboxes, and buttons. So nothing too much. It's pretty much still all visual elements that are already pre-prepped by Fyne. And what we can then do is we can integrate it with live data for continuous updates. Now, the live data that I'll be demonstrating today is going to be taken based on some sensors that I have placed on AWS. So essentially taking live IoT data based on some environmental sensors that I've placed around measuring temperature and some other parameters and seeing it fed into the dashboard created by Fyne. So code for setting up the UI itself is very simple. We use container.newVBox for the vertical layout, and we use the widget new label for the headers, which you can see applied there. So you can see for the header, we're applying the new label real time the dashboard, and for the granularity label, we're pretty much just adding in a label of granularity 1 minute. And of course, this is going to be adjustable later on. We're going to allow it to be adjustable based on the granularity, because as you know with dashboards, we sometimes can adjust granularity to be able to have the dashboard zoom in on certain elements. For instance, may it be 1 minute or 5 minutes or 1 hour, depending on how much you want to zoom in into the granularity of the data. And this is often a very important aspect of development of such things. We can then start to look into the chart creation itself. So we can see that all of this stems from some simple lines of code, starting from the Canvas package, of course, and use it to create some sample custom charts. So we use Canvas new line in particular to create the lines for the axis. And you can see over there that we're starting not just declaring the y-axis and putting in canvas.newline. We're making it black. And accordingly, we're defining positions, position 1, position 2, so we can draw the line through. We then follow a similar approach for the x-axis creation. We more or less want to create a bit of a grid lines as well as part of this. So we can see there that we're basically just declaring the new line with a grid line with the new line from the canvas and pretty much coloring it appropriately with the appropriate RGBA values. And from there, we're pretty much just declaring a new position as well for the grid lines so that they're essentially able to be established upon the specific visualization. And we'll see that later as well implemented when we get to the demo section. We can then look at handling the user input. And this is where things get a bit interesting because we want to make it customizable, as I mentioned earlier. We want to be able to have the user try out different views, different zoom ins and zoom outs. So for that, we're pretty much implementing the granularity slider. So we create a new slider. We then start to implement if on change, then we start to have the value also change. So we then start to look at changing the granularity to be a matter of minutes, and essentially by you scrolling it, it'll change based on the number of minutes you want from here. We can then start looking at generating live data. Now, this is where things get even more interesting. So we want to start off by simulating live data with Go routines. And this is pretty much starting to see how it can swallow sample data. Now, I'm pretty much showing this in case you don't have a sensor handy or you currently don't really have a, well, like a Raspberry Pi or something like that handy that can pretty much help to control the recording of real environmental data. When real data is an issue to be collected, then of course, synthetic data is always the next best alternative. So for this, it's great to pretty much be able to also do this through a simple Go function. So as you can see over here, I am putting in a routine and pretty much just doing a bit of a for over there, which basically just continually generates data with specific timestamps, because when we sort granularity and we want to record what time the data point was received at, we need a timestamp. So accordingly, we put timestamp.now, we put in the value and basically just make it fluctuate a bit over 100 plus a certain amount. And in this case, we're simulating temperature. So we can see that's why it has a bit of a value over 100, which is in Fahrenheit. So yeah, pretty much normal temperature. And we're just putting in a specific time sleep. So shows how often the data points is generated and how it'll be visualized later on as well in the dashboards and the graphs that we create. And this will be continuously updated on the graph, as you will see as well later on. It's a very important thing for us to be able to show this update continuously, because oftentimes when we look at, for instance, environmental data, it's very easy to forget that a lot of these factors can really impact decision making, whether it be receiving data 5 minutes later, 5 minutes. Well, it's always very important to be able to process this data quickly and really get the most insights out of this to be able to make decisions quickly. Of course, we also need to be able to refresh the chart regularly to reflect new data points. And this is also a bit of a trade-off, I would say, because it also depends on how often you want the data to be refreshed. And we can use the canvas.refresh to be able to do this. So we refresh the chart container for a few different purposes. Firstly, for when the chart is currently refreshing to get new values. So when we get new values, we need to refresh the chart to be able to reflect this, and to be able to also reset the chart should there be different granularities or something, or a different kind of filter applied as well, because we want to be able to display the data points at that particular granularity or filter. So this is where canvas.refresh goes in. And this is where we need to understand, well, okay, how often do we need to refresh it? What cases would refresh essentially break the particular chart? So these are considerations that I have had to take into consideration while building this dashboard as well. For data handling and scaling, it was also a bit of a interesting part, I would say. So we need to understand how data can be added in incrementally and also appropriately scrolled to. So essentially, what we want to do is that we want to be able to have the data continuously be added, but we have to be careful that the data that has been in the past is essentially not removed. So that was another challenge that I faced as well originally, to be able to maintain the state. And what we want to then do is that we want to append the specific points. So basically, we're appropriately appending the points based on the specific measurements that we are getting. So we're getting, for x, we're appending by new x plus 50, and y, we are basically just getting 300, which is basically the dimensions of the particular box minus the data value. So this way, we are basically plotting in the points, and we are also scaling based on how far apart points should appear on the x-axis. So scaling is another important thing, because we don't want text to overlap with each other, as I also experienced as well when I was looking at how the x-axis overlaps, values overlaps with one another. And it really is important to be able to consider this in hindsight, and especially because you don't want this to be a problem later on. You can then look at adding the X and Y axes, as I mentioned before. So as part of that, we are adding in the X label, as you can see there. So we're pretty much just putting the time formatting first. We're putting how the time will be formatted. We're coloring it with black and appropriately putting the text size. We are then moving the X label as well based on how it's currently plotted based on point X. So it's a great way of being able to more or less give a judgment of how far apart they are and how much do we want to move the X label. And they really are able to give contexted data points, because if we don't have the specific labels, we won't know what axis is supposed to be for what. And dynamic axis can really update with new points or timestamps, as we will also see in the demo in a bit. They're really able to show you how you can continuously create different views, different perspectives of the graph, and also see how it is portrayed within different granularity levels. Grid lines and markers are another big point, since we can appropriately also allow users to toggle grid lines and markers on and off. And this is more or less a quality of life kind of aspect, because sometimes people might not want to see grid lines or markers. Sometimes people might want to. So I added that thing as pretty much a quality of life. So it really depends on a specific user and how they feel they enjoy it. But essentially, some people enjoy it, some people don't. So it's really helping to enhance the readability or in some, but they might clutter the UI, and that's why we're introducing them. So we can add them in through another widget and pretty much just have it as a new check and appropriately have a function called toggle grid lines, which toggles the grid lines on and off, similar as well for markers. So it's a great way of providing this aspect of customizability to the user, which oftentimes is going to be a big thing, because we need to make sure that they are satisfied with how it looks and that it doesn't clutter the UI. And of course, as I mentioned before, continuing on from our point on resetting the chart itself, it's always going to be an important thing. We want to ensure that when we do reset the chart, we want to ensure that we reset it at the proper time and at the proper way. So this is a sample of how I'm currently defining the reset chart function. So particularly, we're basically clearing the points array and refreshing the chart and repopulating it accordingly. So we can see here that we are pretty much just getting the point array cleared, and appropriately we're running the refresh chart, and from there we get the points populated again. And like I was mentioning, it's a bit of a trade-off, because we need to make sure that it's refreshed only when it's really necessary, especially when points are going to be refreshed, brought in, different zoom in levels. Zoom in is one thing that is certainly a bit more difficult to implement without re-rendering it, at least within this current case. So in this case, we're refreshing it, and so we're starting fresh essentially based on this. And what we don't want to do is that we want to integrate the real-time data feeds. And you can see over here that we are fetching live data from APIs via AWS IoT. So what we want to do is, I'm not going to go in depth about the code itself for fetching the live data, because, well, I want to focus more on the creation of the dashboard and the graphs itself. But essentially, you can see that we are creating 4 different containers. So this is essentially showing the creation of a dashboard. We have a create chart function, which, as it says, it creates the chart. It creates so far based on everything we've defined, and it goes through a different data channel for each one. So each one has different sets of data fed into it. So in my case, I have 4 types of data. I have temperature, pressure, PM 2.5, which is particulate matter 2.5, and also altitude. So these four parameters are what I was measuring with the dashboard. And in particular, I used Go routines to continuously and asynchronously fetch the data and update the UI. And appropriately, I created the 4 different charts for the dashboard. So as you can see, we have a degree of separation that is made here, which really helps with being able to keep track of each of the states that's currently put through into as part of each of the containers and have them reflected on the charts, which is a great way of making sure that everything is keeping up on track. And when it comes to styling the dashboard, we can use Fyne styling options, which includes the different colors, fonts, and layouts. And you've seen it being applied as well to some of the elements already, applying it with, for instance, colors like black. And what we want to do is we can also use custom colors for the different chart elements, whether it be axis, points, markers. It's a pretty simple thing, it's in hindsight, but it's something that to keep in mind. It's best practice to always, when you go on dashboards, keep track of these things, make sure that you are putting different colors for different legends so that everything is clear and people know what is what. And it's always an important consideration when looking at it. It's something that oftentimes we don't take enough care in, especially in terms of making sure that it is understandable for all users, but it's certainly something that we should be doing more. And now I'd just like to show a bit of a demo. For this one, I'll be zooming in to one of the particular charts. So this pretty much will show a bit of a demo on how the different timestamps is reflected. And as you can see over here, we are pretty much receiving data from AWS IoT and pretty much having it reflected in real time. And you can see how it is pretty much plotting the lines and pretty much the graph in real time. And you can see all the different timestamps being tracked. And you can see over as well over there that there is the granularity slider, as you can see here, and also, of course, the checkboxes, which you can check and uncheck for showing the grid lines and the show markers. For simplicity purposes, I'll be showing only one of them since I have been trying to focus as well on creating one particular aspect of this. And you can see pretty much that it is receiving the appropriate temperature that way. So, few key takeaways. Fyne is a really powerful tool for GUI development in Go. Real-time data visualization really is able to enhance decision making by a lot. You're really able to get a lot of insights from real-time data visualization, and with the emergence of AI as well at this point, you can automate a lot of this. You can get the visualization automated and pretty much have a lot of insights fed into it. Because just imagine you have the real-time data visualization, you have real-time insights by automating your data visualization and insights. So it's really a powerful tool to be able to make decisions quickly, and it's really going to be a big player in the future and now. And custom components are going to be key. It's important that you design your visualizations with much customization depending on your requirements, of course. It really depends on how your target audience, how much you need to customize it, what features you want, but essentially that's what will separate how you customize it in Fyne compared to how other players are. And that's one of the things that I really like about Fyne, because you get this customization, you get these elements that you can really use to tailor what you have towards the specific needs of the project. Concurrency in Go really is able to ensure performance, as you have seen over in the demo and more, and as we have also talked about. Aside from that, User-friendly dashboards always require flexibility. You always need that degree of flexibility to ensure that what you are putting through can essentially cater towards different flexible requirements by people. People might look at inserting different values, look at inserting values that might not easily be displayed by dashboards or similar kinds of considerations. So it's always an important thing. And when we design these kinds of aspects, we always need to keep in mind that these are things that we need to be cautious of and be mindful of and ensure that we can provide the best performance that way. And with that, thank you for attending my talk. Unfortunately, I can't be there directly to answer questions, but I'm always happy to answer questions regardless, so please do feel free to send questions my way. You can see all my socials there, my Twitter/X, my LinkedIn. You can connect with me in any of my socials and feel free to reach out to me. I'm always happy to take any questions. And with that, thank you again, and I hope you have a great rest of the day at the conference.
Oh, thanks so much, Rinaldi. Appreciate him coming in remotely to share that with us. Now, if we, I think there's feedback online now, which is peculiar because we fixed that earlier. Just going to re-power cycle the mic. And it is not a problem with the microphone. But perhaps the issue's gone away. Maybe that's better now. There's a really slow feedback on the live feed, sorry. The mic seems to have dropped off the. It should be transmitting now. Actually, I'm just waiting for somebody at the other end to confirm it's. Yeah, loud buzz. Apparently, there's a loud buzz online. Where? Should I try the hardware and pull this out and put it back in again in case the mic connection is a bit weird? I love technology, it just works until it stops just working. Okay, we'll just reset a couple of things. If somebody could confirm whether or not that's working now, that would be amazing. Hopefully that's everything. Still the same. It still has a loud buzz. Oh wow, apparently it's got even worse.
There's huge delay.
Yes. Yeah, we unplugged the mic. I'm going to just drop the stream very briefly and then pick it back up again to see if that's the issue. Hey, we're back. Hopefully the microphone is better. Don't suppose anybody's an AV whisperer by any chance. Cool. We've got some authentic encouragement from the live stream that it must be happening because there's sound issues, so it's clearly a real live feed. If that doesn't fix it, maybe we'll just try switching to a fallback mic. Let's just see what happens. Microphone's working. Oh, the buzz is gone. Has the buzz gone? It's the buzz on the live feed is still buzzing. They say still.
That seems better.
Better? Oh.
I fixed it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. For anybody that wasn't here at the beginning of the stream, Tilo is a hero. He's got this entire place sorted out and now he's fixed our AV as well. Fantastic. Everybody online is screaming, yes! Go get them. We're awesome. I mean, they didn't say we're awesome, but I'm figuring we must be because we didn't know there was a problem. They told us there was a problem and now it's all fixed. Lovely. And just for posterity, I recorded the entire thing, so maybe we'll do a bloopers reel or something like that. Not really. Year after year, we'll get over these things. Okay, right. Apologies for that delay there. We are switching. And I would like to welcome up live now, so the AV will be good for the next session. And if anybody has a burning need to ask questions, well, I guess maybe we'll take them at the end, but we've got a microphone, we'll pass it around for questions so that people online can hear. But I'd like to welcome and thank Nico for presenting to us today about his project Keypass UI.
Okay.
Just click it on there. That's to go forward on the slides if you would like.
Okay, like this.
Yeah. And if you just stand there, the camera will get you and the adoring fans will admire the presentation. Thank you.
Hi, hi everyone. I'm Nico. Today I'm going to speak about my experience getting an app into the Google Play Store. Thank you, Andrew, and the Fyne community for getting me here. And yeah, so I get on with the slides. So a little bit more about me. I'm a software engineer. I have a little bit over 17 years of experience in the industry. I worked in large corporations, startups that became scale-ups, scale-ups that became unicorns, and starting a new job tomorrow, so not saying much about it. Cool. So I might ask a couple of questions, so I need you to raise hands. Sorry, the guys that are online, I cannot see you, but you can answer the questions on the live feed. And what this shows us is that this is an app that got released into the Google Play Store. And the app is a password manager. It's based on the Keypass password file format. I'm not sure if you use one of the Keypass apps or existing tools available. So basically it's a standalone single file that stores all your passwords encrypted. And yeah, basically the main motivation for writing this is because I had someone on my family that was using not fit for 2023, 2024 technology, pen and paper, let's say, and sometimes plain text cloud, not designed for these things. So you could argue that was even worse. And also helped me to learn a little bit more about Golang and UI development. Done pretty much a lot of backend development during my experience, and only a little bit on UIs. So that helped me a lot. going to proceed, and if you have any questions about that, you can ask me at the end. The tech stack is quite lean. It's just Golang, the Fyne library, and one Keypass library is called Go Keypass library. It's not there because it doesn't have a shiny logo to put in, but it's core to the project. Cool. So a little bit of the walkthrough through the features. Basically, we have 2 buttons when we start the app. I'm not going to explain it too much on this one because I have a demo later on. But basically, we have to enter a master password after selecting the database file, and it will list all the secrets that we have there, and we can nest secrets within groups to organize them, so in a tree-like structure. So I'm going to show a little bit the app. The captures that you saw there were for the desktop version. The desktop version runs, but it's not about this talk. Can I just click here?
Yeah.
On, I guess, the left hand side. Cool, so this is the demo. I'm opening a file here. It wants me to enter the master password and enter it. Try not guessing it. So it opens a file. I'm going to edit a new secret there so that you see what's inside, and subsequently delete that entry. So now we are going to get inside the Golang directory. So there's a secret called GoLanguage. I'm going to add a new group there. It says to be deleted. We're going to get inside that group and create a new secret, which we are going to be deleting fairly soon as well. Go back to the Golang group and delete that secret. And then we're going to explore on the root level. We're going to explore the GoLanguage secret inside Golang, editing a field and saving it, getting inside again just to see that what we edited remains there, getting inside the Fyne group, visualize the password using the eye icon, and now we're going to lock the database and open the file again, just to see that what we have done remains there, to prove a little bit of the consistency. If you got any questions, we can answer them at the end again. And that's it. Pretty much all that this app can do. We can create new files as well, but I haven't got that on the demo because the experience is pretty similar. So we have a big hairy Android guy here. So why Android? On 2023 there were apparently 3.3 billion Android devices out there. So I thought that if I put an app out there on the Android platform, I was going to get some users. And also it's a brand of OS that we use at home. We don't have any other, so the choice was simple. So this timeline goes from December to May, but I started on this app on September last year, so it has a little bit over 1 year of development. But it's a one-man band, so with not always the same amount of energy. So yeah, they got more attention over this span of time. My daughter was born in November last year, and I got the paternity leave. In Spain, we got long paternity leaves, fortunately, so it allowed me to get an app released on the Play Store. So to get an app released on the Google Play Store, you need to go to a series of phases. There's one bit they call internal testing, what you can do pretty much everything. You can expose it to basically it's like a pre-agreed list of users that you need to load on the Play Store. and I loaded a bunch of my friends and family there. And that's what I done around January this year. But then Google wants you to do a phase of what they call closed testing, and basically it's in a similar fashion, but they require you to get the app installed for 2 weeks in a row, so 14 consecutive days, with at least 20 users without they uninstalling the app. So here is where it got a little bit complex to me. I'm not sure I met and I know 20 people, but I reached out to a couple of friends saying that I had this problem, which I are actually better with people than I do. And they quickly got me a lot of other friends that were willing to test the app. Here are a couple of questions I asked this while I was testing this. Half of that is in Spanish because most of my guinea pigs testers were Spanish speakers. So first of all, while I was on the internal facing stage, I noticed that I had to explain people what a password manager was. Why would they be interested in such an app? So I kind of asked this question to see what I was dealing with. Most of them answered that they understood the purpose. You always get one of threes. You think that also I got 20 users and only 10 of them replied to my survey. So you think friends and family will always come back to you. Hope yours are better than mine. So how useful was this app? Again, 10 responses, one puts one. So you think they are not going to be honest with you because they are from family, but no, they are. And how happy they were with the current state of the app. But back then the app couldn't create new files and it couldn't edit secrets, it was all read-only. And most of them were happy. But then I asked another question, what were the key missing features of this app? And basically all things that I probably knew back then, but it's nice that they reassured me. So they wanted to edit the files, so they wanted to edit the secrets that were in there, not just see what they had. They wanted to create a new file. They say something about the UI needing a refresh. I'm not sure if it was something about the version of Fyne that I was using at the time, but it looked a little bit blurry on Android. It seems to look better now. And the last one says there in Spanish that I wasn't charging and that I should charge for the app. Yeah, it's not the spirit, it's an open source one and not planning to make money with this, so cool. So I made all the suggestions that they came back on the form. So I added creating new files, editing files, editing secrets, all the things that the users told me, and I applied for production access in the Google developer screen that you have for the Play Store. So you see that just pressing a button, but oops, in between getting this in the Play Store, I asked another question, so in a second form, if they considered this was ready. This was very handy because Google kind of asks you these questions, and they didn't ask me, but it would have helped me with evidence if they asked for it. So I got 11 responses, one more, yay. And they all say yes, that this app was ready for the Google Play Store. Nice. So since I applied for prod on March, it took me 1 month to get access. I couldn't figure out why, but I started sending emails to all the support emails and channels I found online until Google finally came back quickly to the last one I sent, and they grant me access. So it was lost on the limbo of Google for a while. So the morale there is that don't leave things there, because some humans somehow need to interact. And a little bit after that, cleaning up the code a little bit more, I get it released on the Play Store. Cool. So it says this slide that the challenges of working on a non-native approach. Actually, the Fyne apps are native in the Android operating system, but what I meant is that I wasn't using the official tools for developing or writing an app on Android, and that has some consequence on the user experience. So the Fyne framework is designed to look the same in many platforms, but that means that it's not actually using the native components. So some users got a little bit confused by it. Then there's a major feature that this app lacks, which is integrating with the autocomplete integration of the operating system. In all the operating systems, but in particular in Android, it requires interacting with a couple of services, and I don't really know how to achieve that yet, but I think for this kind of application, it's important. It's actually the main blocker, I would say, to say if I were to put money on the Play Store to get users, I would probably want to get that feature, because otherwise I will be burning money. And that's pretty much what I wanted to say about this. That was previously before Fyne 2.5 that I couldn't get the localization easily done, because what you want is that you install this app on your phone and it detects your system language and it presents on the language that is on the system. But actually, a few days ago or a couple of weeks ago, I upgraded to Fyne 2.5, and if you have the phone in Spanish, because it's the only translation I made, you'll get the app in Spanish. So if you want to contribute with another language like German, please, it's quite easy. Cool, so future works. I had a lot more icons for this slide on a previous presentation, but I realized that it's easier to focus on one thing at a time. So the next thing that I'm going to tackle, I think, is a desktop app, especially for Linux, distributed as a Flatpak, because there's some nice documentation, some videos on Fyne on how to do it. And I think it's getting more or less like a standard on how to distribute apps on Linux. So I think it's a nice one to go. I'd love to get it on the App Store, but I'm not feeling like putting money on that yet. And maybe Windows Store in the future, but one at a time. I kind of want to build the core features first. But this one is one interesting that I thought coming up, and I wanted to get a little bit of the feedback from you later on what you think. In the meantime, since we have an audience, I like to probe a little bit. So how many of you have done at least 5 apps or more using Fyne? Raise your hand. So just Andy and Simon. Cool. Okay, so it's around 10% of the audience. How many of you have done 2 or more apps using Fyne? Okay, so getting closer to 30% of the audience or something like that. How many of you have just done 1 app with Fyne? Okay. And how many of you have done or written no apps, 0 apps in Fyne? 1. Okay, so we have a varied audience. How many of you actually released something on the Android, on the Google Play Store? Cool. So 2. Nice. So less than 10% of the audience. That gives me some feedback. I like to see the comments if the remote audience can type. Not sure. So a little bit of the achievements I got from this side project over this time. So the app got listed in the Fyne.io, which is I'm very proud of that. In the Google Play section, you can see mine and that live, which looks very nice on the slide. Then I started a Golan community on my city. So I currently live on Seville. It's the third country I lived, Spain, originally from Argentina. Lived in the UK and London, and then moved to Spain. Cool. So I also got in contact with a place where they accelerate startups and also do some co-working, but they lend the space for communities, so I kind of get a room, not as nice as this one, but similar space, so to do talks in the community, which is quite handy. Otherwise it was just bars. And yeah, and I got a comment from the CEO at Fyne Labs saying that this app is useful, so it has a meaning in this world, which is quite proud, and got accepted to talk at this conference. So yep, a lot for a side project. I'm quite proud about it. Cool. So what I want from you, what I flew all the way to Berlin for this talk, is that you can give me a hand to keep this running and essentially expand it to get some users actually using it. Got a couple of very faithful, loyal users that where the app without auto-completing is fine for them. But I'd like to get the features written, developed, and essentially need help. Cool. So if you want to contribute, there's a lot of work on my end to write down what I think the roadmap should be, how you could contribute, but essentially if you have any PRs to contribute, or simply raise bugs, because I keep finding bugs by myself accidentally, but it will be nice that someone uses it and reports to me the bugs. And yeah, so if you want to connect with me, there's a QR code there that takes you to my LinkedIn profile. It's the only thing that I have the energy to use these days. And there's a repo on GitHub. Cool. I take questions, I guess. Is this a mic? Who's that one? Cool. Any questions? Yeah, there's one question there.
Do you think it's possible to integrate security tokens like YubiKey so that encrypted keys like GPG keys can be on a Yubi token and then still be used with Keypass UI for decryption?
Yeah, it's a very good question. So if I had to answer that question, I would have to say yes, it's possible because I saw other apps doing that. But technically, I don't know how to do it. But if you want to contribute, again, you are invited. But I saw other apps that are doing it on Android, so I think it's possible. Cool. Any other questions? Yeah.
So basically, when the Windows operating system, you are trying to compete with already existing Keypass application, which I didn't use it for a while, but I know it has a lot of features. So probably you will need a few more babies until you. So one feature I see missed at the moment is like password generator, while you are adding a new item. And also, I think now the passwords are not used anymore. Everything is going towards what's called, I just forgot it.
Passkey.
Passkey, yeah, exactly. Thank you. So how are you thinking to integrate this and to get an worked on that.
Lovely. That's a nice question. So the question is how I'm thinking to integrate the new generation feature. The short answer is I'm not thinking on that. What the one that is focusing my thoughts is the autocomplete, because I think it's the most common missing feature that most users will want. But I can see that in a few years, basically pretty much a lot of people are going to be using passkey, and that's going to become more important. So yes, not currently thinking, but I should be thinking is the answer. Anyone else? No? Good.
We don't have any questions online, but there was a lot of thumbs up, +1s, and appreciation for your talk. So thank you very much, Nico.
Okay, thank you all.
Thank you for that. I think that takes us to our afternoon break. People online, feel free to pick up your favourite beverage and whatever snack you can find in the kitchen or the office space. We have some beautiful cupcakes and refreshments outside, so please do help yourself. We'll be back here. We might try and claim back a little bit more time, so about 20 minutes time or something like that. Thank you, everybody, and take a nice break.
That was lucky. That was really lucky. The sound of the thing on the mail was
Okay, we're just gathering, so give us a few minutes and we'll be right back with you all.
I don't have to talk like share it. Like my favorite example of express things like that applies is basically if you consider a table. Normally we would represent a spreadsheet or table in a database, typically SQL. But the thing with storing there is only always the latest state. So it's updated and it's updated. Whereas with TQS, first of all, you're dividing updates, like read, and then events, so saying you're basically just appending events, and when you read the events, you read them the very same thing. The only difference is you read
We had a hum loop when charging. So this if you plug in, it comes, and if not, I don't know why it was not the first time.
I think we're all good now. Everything is working.
Well, it's full enough. So.
Yeah, oh yeah. This one is half, but I think it'll be okay. I'll turn it off during the next presentation and it should last until we're done. Okay, I think we're live.
And that's the difference
You might plug it in during the implementation. If you turn it off, just plug it in.
Cool.
There are a few use cases for example, everything accounting.
Thanks everybody online for bearing with us, and we're excited to come back. And I'll just need to convince a few folk through. I guess mostly we need a speaker.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a clicker if you would like. That's forwards. Okay, that's back. Microphone. Just click that on wherever. Currently live, it's currently recording, it's currently streaming. We have people watching us online saying that we are here, which is great. That must be everything, I think. Do you want a warning or anything if you get to sort of Q&A time? Or?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
I'll say if we get to 25 minutes, I'll wait from over there somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Give me one at 20 minutes already, like one and a two, because in worst case I have to skip or speed up.
Okay.
Because it's okay.
Perfect.
Cool.
If you just hang there, you'll be on the camera. And oh, actually, you can see yourself because the presentation is not there. So I think you got a bonus there. So you should be good.
All right. Nice. Hello. Right. Okay. Yeah, let's get started. Yeah, I'm Simon, and I'm gonna talk about development with Fyne, as the title says, and I'm using a few different concepts with that. So I'm going through how it started, basically, how the journey went, the development process, then the foundations it's built on. I'm showing the application itself, some code snippets, and in the end, some conclusions. So I hope there's something in it for everyone. But yeah, first about me. Doing software development for some time now. Also enjoying house music for a while. I got a kid. I'm into bodyweight exercises, and I also like to eat plant-based. And the exercising thing got serious at some point, so I even got a trainer certification, and I'm also doing that. That's also half of the reason for the new company. So I'm doing consulting in fitness and in software terms. So that's basically what I'm doing. Professionally, yeah, I've done this for a while, like I said, always somehow web-related stuff. And yeah, scale-wise also went up, I guess. Sometimes more, sometimes less, but yeah, I've seen a couple of things. And over the time, I always had to-do lists, basically, so this is kind of where it's going now. The whole journey started with, yeah, I mean, what means started? Like, part of this was becoming a parent to ideas, to an actual kid. I was an open source contributor in a lot of projects back then already.
I had plans to start a company, I was working, I had responsibilities, and it got so much that I was worried to get overwhelmed, essentially. So I was looking for ways to make that manageable. And that got me to searching for books. But if you ever looked into self-improvement or anything, there's a million books, basically. And trying to find practical help is already a challenge. I mean, there's a lot of theory, but then applying that is a different thing. And one thing that sounded really promising was getting things done, because it promises the art of stress-free productivity, like this dream, in a way, that knowledge workers probably have. I at least did. So I started reading with my kid on the arm. I was literally sitting at the desk trying to get on top of things. So yeah, quick explanation of getting things done. Oh, I should stay in here. You think it's a nice diagram, but actually there's a lot of arrows and they actually should have labels. So while it looks interesting and that's probably a cool thing, you start wondering, is that actually going to work out? So you read through the whole thing and you understand, okay, that's kind of wholesome list management. So it's not something new, but it's doing it in a way where you can, in the end, outsource your mental load to a trusted system. And that has 5 steps, which interestingly also map to mental processes. So this capturing stuff and collecting everything is the first step. And then clarifying, saying what all the individual things mean is the next one, the second step. And then you get to organize them, put them in the right context. Say, I want this in the calendar. I want this to remind me later. Maybe I want to do it at a different point, whatever direction you're going. And that is the preparation step to look back and then see what you actually prepared. There's going to be a couple of things that you actually want to do next. There's a calendar, which gives you the overview that that's what's coming. And it also has a weekly review where once a week you're supposed to check your system, because anyone who's done to-do lists over a long amount of time knows they get old and stuff gets actually lost. So that is one way to stay on top of it, to ensure that you always have a reliable review that brings stuff back. So sometimes you're saying, I don't care about it now, but in a month maybe it's still something I want to be reminded of, and then it brings it back up and you can say, okay, now I'm going to put it into the next action step because I want to do it. And that's exactly the thing. In the end, you want to do it. That's the engagement step. Where you prioritize by context, time, and energy. Those are all things that you set up in the organizational phase. So you basically order, now I have only little time, so you get the quick tasks on top. Or I have a lot of energy, then know how much time, then you get the big tasks on top. So this is then how you can prioritize really on the fly, always in the right context. So this is GTD, the quick explanation as I can give it, I guess. Yeah, but does it really make sense? I mean, anyone can write books. Even if they have experience, doesn't necessarily mean it's right, but yeah, you want to find out. So I looked and at some point found a study done by a university in Brussels, and they widely agree that the concepts in the book, they're all sound. And one of the keys is to leave traces, respectively getting back to them, which effectively is the reviewing/monitoring part. Without that, you can basically just leave it and go back to your paper to-do lists or your editor with a text file. That's basically as good then if you don't review the thing. But yeah, implementing the whole system, still the question, is that easy or not? So I started. First, paper and pen, like the version as recommended in the first version of the book, which is essentially telling you should have a few folders, a few buckets. This is where you put the list and you move them around. It works well up to a certain point, because you get into managing paper and it gets so frustrating that you basically stop at some point. That's what happened to me. Like I had stacks of paper on my desk and it was just not manageable anymore. And then you also need to have the discipline to go through all of that once a week. So as a software developer, obviously I got my hammer and went to work. I've done this now for almost 20 years. I've started reading the book when my kid was born, so more than 70 years ago. So that means a lot of iterations, a lot of experience with how this works or not. I studied and learned a lot in the meantime, day job, other things. And the whole process effectively is it still development or is it more evolution? Because it's really continuous iteration, building on top, applying learnings in the meantime. And those learnings basically then lead to certain milestones that I find worth mentioning. First of all, the start. New parent reading the book, then the paper version. And I was doing a lot of databases back then, so command line version using PostgreSQL. The server-side app started CQRS and event sourcing experiments because of the type of work that I was doing at that time. Applied that to a web app, switched to Golang at some point, then started Fyne Experience once I discovered that. And then that started to get serious, basically, over two rewrites, effectively. Which is the very development process that I'm trying to get at. First of all, pen and paper is always great to start with as a basic idea, I think, because it gives you the physical context in a way, which is all nice, and I still use that as a reference, but using it as a visual reference is bad. I had this idea initially, yeah, it should be like on an actual paper, but that got really weird at some point. Once you start getting into deeper, more complex menus, you can't do that on paper, basically. And shifting that mindset was really hard, I have to say. I convinced myself that I need to do it, but actually letting go was more effort than I expected. That was an interesting experience. But local first is natural. Like anyone who's been around for a bit longer has done this before mobile phones took off, so you actually had stuff on your computer anyways. And this is why I started with the database version using command line and stored procedures. It was a fun project, but as everything becomes more available, you also want to use it from work. And you have a server running at home, SSH, command line access and everything, but this is Germany. And internet is maybe was getting more available, but still not more reliable. So you maybe had internet, but it wasn't necessarily fast. And typing on a shell connection that's not responsive is just not fun. Which is why then the server-side web app using the existing database was the next step in the evolution. And I used that for a while. And while this is basically the day job, where I kept using the tool, the web-based first version. And what I learned at work during that time was that standard CRUD models are deadly for performance. And because if everything with a scaling website where you have multiple thousand requests is accessing, trying to read something where you're sometimes also writing to, and that you have a lot of contention, basically. So this is why it's deadly. Like the amount of tricks you need to do in order to make this fast is just not fun. I mean, maybe it's fun in the start, but once you realize that it's conceptually not necessary, it's not anymore. So one thing I tried back there at work was materialized views, but keeping them up to date is tricky. Like it's like the cache invalidation problem all over again. Which is why I started researching what to do. And at some point I found CQRS and event sourcing, and that tripped me over. It took me a while to wrap my head around it, to understand that this is a conceptually different approach to a lot of problems in the same space that I saw before. But I was coming from really big scale, 10,000 requests a second kind of environment, and then implementing that is far away. You can't just go there, because how do you even know that it scales and so on? So I wasn't able to convince anyone to look into this and actually use it, but I kept going for it for my own stuff. Which then came in when I started building the client-side app. What I did then was doing CQRS and command sourcing, which is similar to event sourcing, but instead of working with events, you're just sending the commands. It's not invalid. You can also do it, but you're storing the intent rather than the effect, and that's just slightly different. And it was working. Like for a web-based app, it was actually pretty okay, but pretty okay, only because I also had to do with the JavaScript ecosystem, NPM and all that. It's so fragile. That's also where the picture comes from. One wrong click and you're done. I had a Perl server back then who received the commands. So work was mainly Perl, and I also have so much experience in Perl. Yeah, it's not even funny. Which is then why I made the language switch, because Perl was bothering me maintenance-wise. It's supposed to be easy with CPAN and all, but after more than 20 years, I still didn't get happy. But Golang was nice because it gave me a static type language and also static binaries, and it was fun to work with. Anyone who used Perl know that it's really complex syntax-wise. You can do a lot of things. We had the foot gun before. Perl definitely has a few of those, and Go doesn't. Or at least you really need to search for them, which is why I like it. And then targeting multiple platforms. With web applications, this was a nice idea once, and it sounded really great, but it never really took off the way it was promised. Like at the latest, I guess, when some platforms were removing your web app data. If you haven't used it in a while, that's just a no-go for an application, basically. So then I looked into, what's it called, PhoneGap and Cordova to clunky my app. Yeah, exactly. To package my clunky app, but that's also heavy and all. You're always shipping a browser, which just isn't fun either. Nobody wants yet another engine which isn't maintained if it is out too long. So using Go then started getting my interest on mobile devices. I didn't know it was possible back then. Hoping for a nicer API than HTML and CSS, because that really was getting on my nerves, trying to build interfaces with something that constantly moved and broke and basically didn't do what I wanted, or only with so much effort that I couldn't enjoy the process. That was kind of the issue. And the experiments with Fyne, they all gave me a different experience. First of all, it's because it's native, it really looks exactly the way you want an app to look like, not in a browser, packaged and so on, where you first need to do a lot of stuff to make it look acceptable. And implementing screens in this web way always took more effort than it should, whereas with Fyne, the simple screens, I was just basically starting this, and that widget I need, and just move it around, border layout, kind of done. That's the experience I had with Fyne. And at the same time, while doing those experiments, I also started implementing CQRS and event sourcing, this time the right way, and without any synchronization or anything. So it was really like a completely local only app that didn't synchronize with anything yet, but I had the plans for this, and the plans also were following the CQRS and event sourcing style to have the very same code to process, basically on the server, then on the client. One of those benefits of event sourcing, like you can replay the events wherever you want and can use the same code, which is great. I rewrote this thing after some time, completely reused the CQRS and event sourcing code that I created in the process, and decided to make this a commercial thing, which is quite a commitment, as I figured out. It needs a lot of intense focus and goal-driven development to achieve what you want, because you can't do a million things in software development, but getting to an outcome that you're happy to publish, I guess we all know how much that can take. I started getting active in the community because I was preparing towards something I can publish, and I had a few issues that I then thought best to address in the develop branch, and that's what I did. And I actually solved one of those issues that I ran into, which was great. I contributed in a couple of things, also documentation-wise, where I was trying to do things, had some awkward questions, got a response, understood how it's done, and then I wrote some documentation. So that there was always this, the whole community process back and forth is really nice, and it was always a great experience. And this is also what I'm building on, the foundations. They're great foundations to work with. But in order to use them, it's critical to stay practical. That's one of the things that I've learned over many years is there's a lot of theory behind every single topic. You can probably study it for years, and then you still don't necessarily know how to use it. Like, practically, really understanding something is not the same as theoretical, which is also why I'm going high level, quick over those things, because I don't think it's necessarily worth to go into every detail. I try to bring out the essentials of it. This is why it's a high level overview, basically. Fine, yeah, that joke came up before. It's way more than fine, because targeting all platforms that I care about is easy. I mean, there's a few command line arguments, but that's basically it. You package for one platform and you're done. And then you still need to do the usual stuff, signing and whatnot you need depending on the platform. But it's easy. The same goes for the API. It's so clean and effective. It was so much fun it is so much fun to create user interfaces with that API, because it's different than HTML and CSS, of course, but once you get it, it's just starts flowing. And this is why I also said, like, it encourages portable UI. Now, it moves the focus from design to functionality, because I started forgetting about how it has to look like. I just focus on, okay, I need this input, I need that widget, and then it just looks how it looks, because Fyne is more than just Fyne. And it keeps winning and maybe I should have added that, but my own UI toolkit comparisons. I do them every now and then just to have an idea, and then to see also what I maybe missed or not. Usually, like so far, always it's what I didn't miss. No toolkit comes as close with regards to the little amount of overhead and the amount of platforms it targets. And that's fantastic. And the community, like I said already, it's awesome. CQRS sounds a bit abstract. Is very simple actually. It's just command, query, responsibility segregation. So you just separate reads from writes, but that has really important implications, because you can do things for every code path the way they should be. So you don't have to think about, but what if someone wants to read while I'm writing, or the other way around. That's just a non-issue to begin with, and reads are always free of side effects. So if you stick with it, you end up with so clean APIs that they scale completely differently, and they detach things as well. So you can start writing an application without taking commands yet, but you can model out the reading side of it. Oh crap. And that's always going to be fast, right? Because the reading side is optimized for that. So you're not writing some generic database, but you write the model that you're going to use to read. And building the command APIs, then the next thing, which is also straightforward, because just one lane of communication where you just send your commands, there's a queue behind it, and that takes care of things. And event sourcing is basically the user of CQRS in this case. Everything is event-based. Commands are the things that make the changes, and the cool thing with commands is they record intent. So you're not just storing the data, you're storing why you're storing it, which is really essential. And then the resulting events can be used to update state. So that means you have a single source of truth, and you always use that to rebuild anything. So if something breaks, you have a mistake in the model, you just replay all the events, and you recreate the model. And if you do that with depending what the model is, if it's an output file, you just do an atomic rename, and nobody's going to notice that you did a rebuild of the model in the meantime. So that's pretty cool. I need to speed things up a bit because I'm running low on time, I just saw. Another thing, because it has queuing, means eventual consistency, which is also great. You can take the system offline, get events, people still see stuff, you bring it online, nobody notices, except maybe some like eventual consistency. Maybe you need to deal with it in a business logic and process-oriented way. So you need to think about what goes wrong from the user perspective, not from a technical perspective, but how do I compensate for things that go wrong, basically. Yeah. The mock models to decouple UI from business logic is just a quick way to get started. You just type the data that you want to receive, and then later you implement the model. So it's just a dummy model way of getting started. Another big one, domain-driven design. The way I learned it, or learned to understand it, is that it's a design approach to target the specific problem space. So you're focused rather than coming up with a generalized solution. And everything is divided into so-called bounded contexts, which is trying to encapsulate just the business logic that you want to represent and nothing more, which then also means the terminology you use is from that business domain. So instead of calling something something as a generic name, you really use this is a contract or this is a banner or something, depending on what you're representing, which makes it really nice to work with because it's the thing you're working with. It's not some abstract thing, it's really concrete, which makes it really goal-driven effectively. Like you're always going for, this is the thing I'm doing with it. And what I want to mention here as well is because it was really important for me to get my head around, is aggregate design. And aggregate here is effectively something like entity in a relational model, just to give a slight idea what it means. And designing that right is critically important for performance as well. Because if you have a lot of things writing to the same thing, you get contention again. So you basically want to design this in a way where it's independent from a lot of other data, so you're not getting the contention part. Domain-driven design also highly recommends CQS, event sourcing, and model-driven design. The things that I mentioned already, basically. And in this context, one hint that I found really great is event storming to get started with domain-driven design. You basically write out, this is a command that's going to happen, this is an event. So basically just brainstorm all the events and commands, and then you start organizing them. It's a great way to get this going. Right, so pictures, or it didn't happen, I guess. Just the numbers before the pictures. Yeah, it's now almost 27,000 lines of code, a bit more than 100 files. And it's fun to work with it. Every time something breaks, I'm enjoying it, because with event sourcing, you replay, rebuild the model. It's such a quick turnaround, it's fun debugging. I never said that before, never had this experience, but I can recommend it. Yeah, so this is now the application, the different steps that I mentioned from the GTD process. So I think I can go a bit faster now to wrap this up in not such a long time. So there's the first step, to capture things, and showing the desktop version and the mobile version basically. And step two, it's just going through the different phases of the process, and also showing that I actually did this and showing an actual user interface rather than just talking about something or using AI to generate something. I'm really not going deeper into it because I'm otherwise running out of time. So if you want to see this in more detail, it's basically the steps that I explained earlier already. And this is my actual system. So this is a screenshot from a production app if you want, like if you consider that everything I do production in a way. And you also can see there's more detail than the high-level stuff that I mentioned. So putting things into context is there, projects, how long something takes, how much energy it takes, which is then used later in the engagement process. If I actually want to do something, here I can order it, say I want to order it by how much time it takes or energy in the respective context. And then I can say I want to finish the item, or archive it because it's maybe of such importance that I want to look at it later. And that's the app. And then quickly going to go through some code because I didn't want to leave that out. This is an actual example. This you can find in the documentation. It's one of the results that I produced after not figuring something out, asking, and then I got feedback. And it's effectively a list item widget, which truncates the text, because otherwise it pushes the screen to accommodate everything that's on it. And like this, the labels get truncated with an ellipsis rather than extending the screen further. And it's, yeah, you can see it's in the mobile version, it's very visible because almost everything is truncated. And the construct is really easy. It's just basically, I called it list item. This is literally how it's called in my code. I first copied the documentation, but then I thought, no, I need to use the actual code to make it real. So it has the title and the value basically. And in the initialization, I'm just saying that the title should be truncated. And in the renderer, I'm then telling to position the one thing to the right and then the other one in the middle. And whoops, I thought I had a screenshot of that, but it's this one, sorry. That's then the result where the truncation kicks in. And then another example that I found worth mentioning, I was building a website actually, anyways, and then trying to add dark mode. That's annoying. That was really annoying. And then I looked into, like, comparing that with Fyne, it's so easy. Custom themes, like, I mean, I also had to look it up, and maybe I got it wrong, I don't know, but then someone will tell me, and I have to document it after that. But it was really easy. Also, scaling, it's kind of built in, it's also really easy. So I've just built a custom theme wrapper, which has the variant of the theme and the scale. That's basically it. And then 2 methods to adjust for the colors and to adjust for the size, simply multiplying by the scale. That's basically all I'm doing for the custom themes. Then I have a simple helper method that gives me back an instantiation of the theme based on the name and the scale. Then using it is, I'm storing it in preferences, then using that with set theme. Yeah, that's a custom theme. And yeah, putting it all together was like so many iterations, 15 years or more in that. A lot of this, I'm actually using this app on a daily basis. It does what it should, and the big hint there, always keep using the data you have. If you leave the data aside and start new and then you don't use the data, you're basically screwing yourself over. That's my experience. And yeah, and closing thoughts, Fyne looks and works just great. It's awesome. And DDD, domain-driven design, helps a lot with focus and scope. I can highly recommend it. CQRS to maintain separation of concerns. Event sourcing, another way to call it, is versioning control for your data. And my app really benefits from the whole paradigm shift. It's worth looking into. And I don't know how much time we now have. Okay, yeah, so don't ask now, but later. And you can find me in the community chat or hit me up directly. I'm happy to share anything, basically. Thank you. Thank you, Andrew and Thilo, who's apparently organizing. I thought Andrew was doing that. Thank you, Fyne Labs, for organizing and sponsoring the community, the audience, and you. Thanks a lot.
It will take a minute or two to change over, so if there's burning questions, perhaps you could
sure,
ask right
sure.
now, but otherwise I'll just get the next talk started.
And anyone? Questions? I mean, or not? Yeah?
How does the app is named?
Done that.
Is it available in the hub? Is it open source?
No, it's not. I'm afraid. If I can find a model where I can make a living, I mean, not just with that app, but it should provide an income stream, that's the idea. If I can manage that, I really want to make it open source, but there's this condition, I can't just give it away. And I mean, I want to offer a service who then can do backup and a few other things. At some point, I will definitely get there, and if someone has an idea how to get there now, I'm more than open to talk.
It's on Play Store?
Not yet.
Not yet, okay. Sorry.
No, I wish I made it that far already, but like I said, it's a lot of work.
Good job. I read the book twice and it's a nice idea.
Yeah.
There's no questions online, but a couple of rounds of applause, so thank you so much for that.
Cool.
And now I'm very grateful for some more of our community who've come together to create a couple of lightning talks. They're going to be, they've been pre-recorded because we wanted to chop through them quite quickly. So I'll let Sammy, Michelle, and Nick explain what they've been working on and what they would like to talk about, how Fyne has been helpful in their work, project, coding journey.
Hello everyone and welcome to this lightning talk where I will show you this application that I use in a daily basis in my office. It's an electronic medical records, a software that helps doctors organize, store and retrieve patients' information like medical history and conditions, prescriptions, invoices and many other things. First we will see a typical workflow and then we will talk a little bit about code. These are the demonstration patients. Let's take an appointment for tomorrow. Appointments can have a type. Let's put X-rays, and these types are totally customizable. We can add anything we want, just like this, and change the color. Okay, now let's say that the patient arrived. It is listed here in the waiting room. We click to open it. We create a new appointment. We write some medical complicated terms and some conclusion. Now, prescription, everything is very simple. It's all auto-completed. And the application will store and remember all drugs used by the user, or you can search in our national drugs database for some medications, like this for example. Click and insert. 3 months, okay. After that you can print with one click. You can select the printer, the paper size, and here it is. It generates a PDF that you can directly print. Now, after that, the patient must pay the prestation. So you have here invoices types that are also customizable. Let's add, for example, this polygraphy 8,000 dinar. Now we just check polygraphy, but let's say that patient didn't have enough money. This is the price and this is what the patient gave you today. So it is displayed that there is a lack in money. How can I say this? Sorry. So let's go back to the waiting room. As you can see, this button has updated. Remember this button, we will see it in the coding section. If we click, you have here invoices listed. If you click on an invoice, you have what patient gave you and what is remaining. Let's say that he made another payment of 2,000. We have 2 payments for 1 invoice and 2,000 remaining. From here you can add another payment, another invoice, and look at this button. It's the same as here. It's the same widget, it's the same custom widget we will see in coding section. Last, I want to show you this stats tab that displays many interesting statistics about office activity. You have to select a period, let's say just today. Okay, Here is our patient. He came today. Here are the two payments, and here is the invoice and what remains to be paid. Okay, now let's go to code. Sorry, here we are. In this application, I use an all widgets approach. It means that every piece of user interface is put in a custom widget. This is for better encapsulation and code organization and cleanness. And this is for reusing widgets in different parts of the application, as I showed you with the button. Here is the button that I was talking about. It's a facture button. And here is the list of invoices. Each item in this list is also a custom widget. It's a facture item. And if you remember in the patient's invoices listing, this item in the list is the same widget as this item in this dialog. Reusability and simplicity. When you click on an invoice, you have the payments. Each item here is also a custom widget. Here, it's a facture add widget, custom widget, with a helper function to directly display it inside this dialog. This button, of course, is the same factual button as we saw earlier. And each line here is a custom widget. It's a factual add item. Now in the stats tab, the list of this widget list is a custom widget. Here it is. It's a stats comptability, and it's the same widget that is used for receipt payments and facture invoices. You just set this type flag to either type receipt or type facture, and the widget will adapt its behavior and displaying to the situation. Each item is of course a custom widget. It's a stat conta list item. This is just a VBox, a Fyne container VBox, but with a padding of 0. Even inside each list item, this is a custom item. It's a stat conta list item header, and every line here is also a stats conta list item detail. In this approach, code is clean, and each widget is encapsulated and is autonomous. It can work all alone. It accesses database, it displays information. You just have to initialize it with the right data. And it communicates with other widgets, just like standard Fyne widgets, with methods and callbacks. We try to never access directly inside the widgets variables. That's all from me. Thanks for watching, and thanks for the opportunity to present you my work, and goodbye.
Hello, my name is Michelle Williams. I'm so sorry not to be with you in person today, but I'm delighted to be talking about my project using Fyne and Vision to make a medical calculator app. This app is to do with lung cancer. Lung cancer is a common cause of cancer deaths around the world, and smoking is the leading cause of lung cancer, responsible for about 85% of all lung cancers. Lung nodules are small clumps of cells in the lungs. They're actually quite common, and in many cases perfectly benign, don't cause any problems at all. But some of them need follow-up, and some of them might be cancer. And so in my day-to-day life as a radiologist, I spend a lot of time looking at lung nodules and measuring lung nodules. The size of them and how size changes over time is really important. And we have a metric called the volume doubling time. It assesses how quickly a lung nodule is growing. If it's growing very, very fast, it's more likely to be benign, maybe something like an infection. If it's growing very, very slowly, it's again more likely to be something benign, something that's been there a long time and less likely to be cancer. So volume doubling times in the middle are very important for us to identify. And we've got a formula, some mathematics that we can do to calculate this. But I have a problem. The problem is the software at my hospital frequently doesn't actually work in terms of the volumes not being calculated or the volume doubling time not being calculated. I've also got an app that works on my phone from the British Thoracic Society, which is great, but it only works on iPhone and only calculates volume doubling times in certain ranges. I want to be able to do it on any system, anywhere I'm working, and to work out volume doubling times across the whole range of sizes. So the aim of this project was to develop a simple app to calculate volume doubling time from 2 sizes at 2 time points and to have this displayed on my app rapidly. So for this I'm using Fission, which is from Fyne Labs. You can sign up to download it here. And this is what happens when we start using Fission. So first of all, I'm going to load up a template. There's a variety of templates available and a variety of themes available at the moment. And I'm going to start with the BMI calculator and the pastel theme. I'm going to put in the name of my app, volume doubling time, and then create the basic template of my app. So this template is based on calculating BMI. We've got some different themes already inbuilt here. I'm going to adjust the color of the text in the light theme so that it's a bit darker and easier to see, but most of the time I use the dark theme anyway. I'm going to change the text at the top to say what the app is, make it bold, justified to the center of the screen. And then in the container of the whole app, I'm going to add another label. In the tree down the side, I can move this label. I'm going to move it up a bit, and this is going to say what the first set of measurements are. Oh, a bit too high. There we go. So this is going to have a little bit of disclaimer text in it. Obviously, this isn't a medically certified app, should only be used by trained professionals and shouldn't be relied on for clinical care. As you can see, this text is extending outside the boundary of my app. So once I've changed and sorted the spelling, I'm going to select word wrap so that this wraps into a box the size of the app. I'm now going to create another label. And this label is going to say what the measurements are. So these are the first set of size measurements. And I'm going to have a measurement, the volume, and I also want the date that this was created. So this is volume 1, and I'm going to change the kilograms to millimeters cubed because that's the units of measurement. And I'm going to change this label from weight to x1, and I'm going to use that in the maths that I'm going to calculate a bit later. So that's volume 1, this is date 1, and I'm going to remove that entry widget, and instead I'm going to add a date entry widget. Now, when we run the app, you're going to see that this lets me select a date, month and day in a very nice, easy way. So that's the layout of the first set of measurements. Now I need to do the same again for the second set of measurements. So I'm going to start with a label with the size of the second nodule. Sorry, the second size of the nodule. And then I'm going to add a container. So my widgets are going to be within containers. I'm going to have a container with 2 containers within it. So that's one container. And this first container is going to contain the label for the volume and the label for date as well. It's going to be a border container with a VBox container within it. So those labels are orientated vertically one on top of the other. So this is volume 2 and the label for date 2. We'll just change that first date text label to date 1 while we're at it. Now I'm going to create the second container, and this is going to have within it the measurement and the date. So it's going to have an entry for the measurement and a date entry for the date. So just like the ones above, I'm going to have some example text, example of a slightly larger increase in size of the nodule, and I'm going to make the ID x2. And the date, I'm going to have the ID of t2. So this is going to be a VBox again. And then the overall container is going to be left aligned so that they nicely line up like the ones above. Make those bold so that they look the same. And then I need to move that calculate button down to be beneath the container. So the final thing I need is the label where I'm going to put the results. So I'm going to insert a label and I'm going to give it the ID out for our output, and I'm going to make it blank to begin with. There's no holding text there. Now let's just review everything we've got. We've got x1, which is our first measurement, x2, which is our second measurement, 2 dates labeled t2 and t1. The calculate app is linked up to the calculate function already, and we can go to main.go and adjust that calculate function. So I'm going to add in an import for math, which we're going to use here, and then copy in the function that we've created based on the formula I showed you earlier. And then I can click on the run button, and the app will be building. Now the run and install are there because I've got developer tools switched on, and you can see now the app running. We can put in a volume, a date, a second volume that's a bit larger, and a second date that's later in time, and we can click on calculate, and it's calculating their volume doubling time of 98 days, which is very fast but reassuring, suggests a benign etiology. So this is very useful for me in my day-to-day clinical practice. So a couple of other things on the Fission screen here. You'll see up at the top right, we've also got preview, where you can preview your app, just the UI of the app, and deploy, where you can send it to Jeffrey. So if I click that deploy button, it sends it to Jeffrey, the build server. You can see it building, and then I can download that app to use on my computer wherever I happen to be working, in whatever operating system I want. So thank you very much. That's a whistle-stop tour of something that's really useful to me and hopefully useful to you.
Hi, welcome to my talk on interesting packaging stuff with Fyne. All the slides for the talk are at this GitHub link. Please do download them and have a look if you're interested. I will be flying through this, as a lightning talk should be. My name is Nick White. Let's get started. So here's the contents. I'll be covering Rescribe, which is the OCR tool I developed, and which all of the tricks I'm talking about are applied in. We'll go into creating a universal binary for Mac, embedding some native binaries inside the Go binary that you create, Linux packaging with Flatpak, and a word on some graceful fallbacks it's worth taking into account. A caveat, I haven't used Fyne Cross, which seems mad given that I'm talking about cross-compiling and packaging and stuff. It looks very good. It wasn't a thing I was aware of when I did my initial development work, so there could be some overlap. Anyway, let's go. Rescribe. So it's a piece of OCR software. The GUI is in Fyne. This is the GitHub address for it. If you're interested in looking, the command/rescribe directory has all the interesting stuff from the perspective of Fyne and packaging and stuff, including a make file. Okay, creating a universal binary for Mac. So you probably know newish Mac laptops have ARM chips rather than Intel chips, M1, M2, etc. Obviously these are different architectures, so you need to build them differently. However, Mac has a concept of a universal binary, which is essentially just a binary which glues the two together with a bit of metadata. You can create that quite straightforwardly if you create a binary for each with Go build, as I show here. You can then use a tool called LiPo, which is available on OS X Cross, or through Xcode on Mac if you have a Mac. That will then combine the two together in a format that Mac can read. Then once you've done that, you can use the Fyne package to create the .app as normal, and you can use CodeSign to sign it. Signing it is helpful for reducing the amount of scary messages that Mac will show at you. CodeSign, as far as I know, you can only get it to work on the Mac. Maybe possible otherwise, probably a pain in the ass. This is how you get that to work. You basically create a certificate of type code signing, and then you pass it to the code sign command I showed at the bottom there. Okay, embedding native binaries, next thing. So the Rescribe tool uses a C++ program called Tesseract to do a lot of the heavy lifting. This obviously is not built with Go, so it is more of a pain in the ass to get different architectures out of and to link in, but I still wanted to have one binary which contained everything that was needed. So you can do this with Go embed, which essentially just stuffs a whole bunch of whatever you want into your finished binary, and then so each Tesseract binary plus any libraries it needs, you can stuff into a zip, embed that using build constraints to embed the right version for whatever you're building, or none if you're not building something which there is a pre-done version for. Then you can just unzip that within the program into a temporary directory, run it, and nobody is any the wiser. Malware authors also do this, I believe. It's also nice practice to be able to use Go generate to download those zips, because you probably don't want them in your repository. That would be mad. You can do that by creating a little package which you go build ignore pragma. That's how you do that. It's nice. So dynamically compiled binaries, so ones which use external libraries, can be hard to make portable. On Windows it's quite easy, as long as you find all the DLLs that are needed and put them in the same directory as the executable. That's where Windows will look first, so that'll work. With Linux, it's often easy to just build something statically. Thanks, Linux. With Mac, it's a pain in the arse. This is the procedure. Essentially, you need to find all the dynamic libraries it uses. So you need to run otool-l on the executable and on all of the libraries and on any libraries they reference and so on, and then use this install name tool to change the path they're looking for to one with this @executable path, and then reassign those executables and libraries, and then it'll work. And obviously you need to do that for ARM and Intel if you're doing both of those. Maybe there's an easy way, let me know if so. Linux packaging with Flatpak. So there are lots of different ways of packaging things for Linux. Flatpak is a nice one which works on pretty much all distributions. Basically you create a YAML file which describes how to build it. The build environment doesn't have access to the internet though, so one thing you need to do is just use Go mod vendor to stash all of the modules that any particular version uses, and then add them as a source. So they're pre-downloaded into the build environment. Then it will work nicely. There are some good build tags that Fyne makes available. There's a Flatpak one, excuse me, which enables desktop portals, which gives you a nice native file picker and improves sandboxing. There's a Wayland tag, which enables Wayland rendering, which is what modern Linux systems use rather than X11. But not all systems support it. So again, you can build both versions and create a launcher script that picks one. Thanks a lot to Jacob Alzen for his work on this stuff. He's made it much nicer in Linux. This is roughly what the YAML looks like for that. Quite straightforward. You can see it combining or giving two different binaries and a launcher script. Graceful fallbacks, the last thing to mention. It's nice to make sure that find, get and go run work well. So use build tags to do anything fancy like embedding, so that a default run doesn't need anything but what's in the repository, and you should be all good. The end. Please email me. Sorry I can't be here today. I hope you really enjoy the conference, and goodbye.
And I think we're back. Thank you very much, everybody, for having contributed to those some really interesting videos. Cool. Okay. Juggling the glamorous setup here. It will be well worth it in the final videos when it all looks like polished and seamless and carefully crafted. Yeah. Okay, I think everything there is working once again. I have been told by some of the people who provided the lightning talks that they're online for questions if they come up. But given that we're sort of a little bit all over the timetable, I thought we'll just carry on, get to the Q&A, and if something comes up that they could help us with, we will ping them. And then it gives them a little bit more time to answer because they're at day jobs and or family care or traveling somewhere in the world in the current time. But I really appreciate them taking the time to record in advance. And with that, we can say thanks once again to our lightning speakers. And we're on to the final segment. Yeah, we made it. Thanks very much. I have been inspired and learned things through those presentations. I hope that everybody else has had similar moments of inspiration, epiphany, or just commitment to actually, I'm going to now go and do something to my app or improve something that I saw or contribute to the projects that have been shared or the overall community. So as has become traditional, I wanted to just spend a couple of minutes at the end of this presentation day to talk about the project, where it's going, the things that we're hoping to see soon, and a little bit further down the road to set up a bit of a conversation as we go into the evening. There'll be a Q&A at the end, which probably starts a little bit with people who are joining us online can contribute, and we'll try and get back to them. And as a couple of minutes, as we get towards the half-hour mark, we'll shut off the live stream, the interaction there, and we will head to the refreshment area to have some more in-depth conversations, perhaps, about very important technical issues. So the plan going forward is largely trying to continue with the momentum, regularly releasing public major feature advancements to the toolkit every 4 to 6 months. I mentioned to a couple of people here already that this flexes a little bit, but depending on people's availability, challenges that life and work throw at us. So it's not particularly set in stone, but it's good to have a routine so that people know what to expect, and so that people who want to contribute to the project kind of know when the next big push might be, or when they could expect a feature that they delivered to be released into public. Because there's nothing better than I made a thing and knowing that it's then in front of hundreds of thousands of people who might then benefit from the improvement that you made. Either way, We will continue with approximately monthly bug releases. These are making sure that anything that is, needing improvement is released to the community and everybody using Fyne in their applications in a speedy-ish manner. If anything critical comes up, we will do a more rapid release, but monthly seems about right, and we'll continue to do so. So if you're contributing bug fixes, as long as there's no API that's involved in adding, then you should see that in public hands in the maximum of 1 month. So that's, a little bit of how we're going to do it, but what is it that we're going to be doing next? So the 2.6 release, which is our next major release, is going to be towards the end of this year. The exact date isn't set yet because we haven't finalized the feature set. But it is going to be improving the concurrency for different applications. It was a topic of discussion earlier today in the contributor meetup, and hopefully some aspiring contributors are going to help us solve these big challenges so that not only can people get started building applications really fast without having to know anything about how this works under the hood, they can then run the go race condition checks over their application and find that there are no issues, as opposed to finding that there might be some. So we're making more use of the excellence in the Go programming language to bring the same rigor to the user interface. We have some cool new widgets, which I'm going to come back to as well. And I feel like with all of the talk about new platforms and the distributions that people are wanting to use, we should work on this a little bit more as well. And lastly, if what's on your mind isn't in there, that's okay. We've still got plenty of room potentially to put it into that release, but also we're already talking about what goes into the release after. We name the releases alphabetically at early stage planning. So 2.6 was called F. It has a name, which I can't remember right now because we got closer to deliverables. The release after is the next letter, and it doesn't have a name. So release G, it will probably be 2.7 because we're trying to avoid ever needing to go to a version 3. We want to be backwards compatible all the time. But we hold back the possibility that one of these days we may actually have a really compelling reason to jump, so the version numbers aren't committed until much closer to release time. So the enhanced concurrency that I mentioned earlier, I just wanted to go into a little detail so people can sort of expect a little bit more, or know, what to expect and how that works in their applications. This is going to deliver improved performance because internally we can do less complicated things to avoid potential issues. This, like I said, means that you can eliminate the potential race conditions, so you can run Go's race checker and a whole load of other tools against your application and know that it's always doing the right thing. And to make this possible, we're going to add, I hope, background services, which has been requested a few times recently. Not only are they helping to manage the concurrency, it makes your code cleaner, which is great, we all like that, but also it means that we can have more of a kind of running in the background feel for mobile applications, which wasn't an issue until recently, but now there's really compelling apps being written in Fyne and distributed to all these platforms that not actually running in the background unless it's pushed or the user triggers it is a bit of a barrier to some usages. So we're going to try and address that as well. And you'll probably see a new API called Run from Go routine, which is going to help to manage connecting your background code, which is custom in some way, to the internal implementation. We're still working on the API there, so I wanted to share it in case people had feedback. Definitely open to discussions at this time. Let us know what you think. If you've got experience or opinions in this area, do join the community, share, comment on GitHub, all of those things. We want this to be as easy to understand as possible, but rich and safety focused. So looking at new widgets, of course, we're welcome all contributions of new widgets if they can deliver value, meet the API design requirements or the cleanliness of the API that's been mentioned by a few speakers already. They would be absolutely welcome to join this list. There's just a couple that I thought was worth calling out here in case you were just holding back until it was ready. Hold no longer, or not much longer. Calendar, date entry, and time entry. 3 things that are going to be essential to help get your application to understand or to receive input from your users regarding time. On discussion this morning, it seems like a time zone picker is actually going to be important as well to round out the functionality in that area. Calendar was contributed by a colleague of mine at Fyne Labs called Derek, who put it into FyneX. That's now been promoted up to Fyne on the develop branch. That and date entry are already available. So if you like living on the, I'm not going to call it bleeding edge, but cutting edge, that functionality is available, and time entry will follow closely after. Another one that I want to see added is a number entry or some form of plus minus with a number in the middle, because for a lot of the touch-based UIs, it's so much easier than switching into an entry field to type a number when actually just like 2 or 3 up from where you were is the easier thing to do. I put spinner here in case people weren't familiar with it, and then I realized when writing earlier slides that I called the activity indicator a spinner, and it became obvious to me that the terminology is either ambiguous or collides across different platforms, so we need a clean and unique API there to make it clear. Another area that we're working on is form validation. This is something that has got a few bugs that we're trying to resolve, but also the consistent approach to marking something as required is going to be an improvement, so that you can have the user indicate it when something is required rather than just have it in a validator so they get pinged at the end of the form if they missed something. We want it to be much clearer. And I'm very hopeful that rich text entry exists in there as well. I would say that at least 20% of the chat over lunch was, but how difficult is a rich text entry, and can we get it, and will I be able to build that? So it's cool, it's on everybody's tongue, it would seem, and yes, it is very difficult, but we're going to get that in because it enables a whole load of cool functionality. Just also touching a little bit on signing and platform packaging. Currently, Windows executables, we don't have integration for signing, so we want to resolve that. And there is a note on some download sites that here's how you get your macOS app to work on an Apple Silicon device, because it's going to tell you that it is corrupted by default. Because it would seem that Apple doesn't like developers sharing their work unless you pay them to approve it. And actually, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, we need to have better integration for that peer-to-peer sharing. We do have certification when you're sending it up to the store, but we're going to add more support for the functionality needed to share it more safely or in a better approved way with your colleagues, friends, whatever. And following on from a lot of the chat about Linux, it'll be interesting to see what more distribution support we can get in there. Flatpak and those types of systems are helping to get things in a kind of one-stop download way, but there's a lot of traditional packaging systems out there that it would be good to have improved support for as well. And iOS needs a few quality of life improvements. The simulator is having some challenges, and we're aware of those. We're trying to make improvements, but at the same time, we're going to review how we can improve the first-time developer experience for iOS to see if we can help get their things into the simulator without having to sign up to developer portals and get approval from Apple. So that's another topic that we're looking to get improved. So those are things that are work in progress or semi-committed to the next release. But there's a whole lot more that is either on the plan, vague ideas of things that we want to see improve, just to get an idea of where our minds are at. Mobile scrolling speed is something that's come up before, but more interesting, the momentum or the inertial scroll, something that makes the applications feel more native again, is something that it would be great to see in the next release, but definitely needs to come in the pretty high priority. Nobody's working on it right now, so if anyone's inspired who wants to help us get it into the 2.6 train, that would be amazing. Accessibility is another big one. I think that probably stands on its own, but we want to help people get their applications in front of as many people having a good experience as possible. That should be the default. It is a lot of work, and so it's taking time. We're also working internally on the Fyne command line interface, the thing that helps with the packaging and adding some of the glossy exterior to a graphical user interface or the drag and drop app that we're used to. And we're trying to figure out how we can make cross-compilation even easier than it already is. So if you have all of the tooling installed, it's going to work great. You can use FyneConf if you prefer a containerized approach, but that's a switch that people have to understand the reason for there being two systems. So we're trying to figure out, can we make the Fyne system, the command line interface, do the right thing all the time and spin up what is necessary given your current system to make the result that you're asking for possible. So I had to get my head around that as well. The nice thing is it's a complex problem, we can solve it, and then nobody's going to have to worry about it again. And on the web side of things, mobile web actually requires a little bit more work. So the irony being that the web is ubiquitous and it's super easy to build for, apparently. We build native applications by default where everything just works. But our web driver didn't work out of the box because web is not the same on mobile and on desktop, and we've got a few things like how the software keyboard interacts to resolve. So web is excellent on desktop clients, but we need to make sure that across all platforms it's just as well served. Oh, so there's some things that's on our mind, what we're hoping to achieve, but why? I mean, what's this all about? Where could this go if we had more time or more people involved in helping to make this happen? I'm super interested in where we can go if we're not only building apps with one platform for all platforms, but if we could actually make it possible for everyone everywhere to gain access to the same software, where the store itself is able to target all platforms, which technically it can. That window over there is an application that's running that will scan our apps.fyne.io repository and tell you about the software with a one-tap install that you can see succeeded for the Game Boy emulator there. This, I think, would help to improve discoverability. It's a way down there kind of a vision, but if you say to your friends, hey, are you on this latest chat platform? You don't have to worry about whether it's available for their system. You just say what it is and that software is available. So this ubiquitous distribution means that it's as easy for the end user as it has been for us to make the software. And of course, if we have our way, it will mean that we can enhance the open source even further with free hosting, free discovery, and basically, share the love, make everything as good as it has been that we've learned along the way for developing on top of an open source platform. Of course, a great place to start is the repository that I mentioned of all of the apps. I think that's a solid underpinning. We're going to keep adding to it. Throw your apps in there, and you may find that it just automatically becomes part of the first ubiquitous software store that's built on Fyne as well. So that could be pretty fun. Sorry, there is something really exciting happening outside, isn't it? But I think it's just busy. That's okay. I understand we are in a gorgeous setting today, so I can't fault them. I think the one other thing that I really wanted to sort of share or ask today is to help us spread the word. Get the apps that you're building, the things that you're working on, get them out there, put them on the listing, whether it's through sharing with your friends or putting it up on our store, or whatever channel seems like the right thing for you. Let's see if we can bring them together so that more people see what's possible. And yeah, I suppose that's really kind of like the distribution point. How can we get this into more people's hands? But it's not just about code. It is about the documentation, the tutorials, the videos, having glamorous and well-educated guest speakers come to events like this to help add to the rich content. We've found that some people prefer video learning, some people like to read, others like to examine the code. And documentation isn't everybody's first port of call, even if it's integrated with your IDE. So all of these areas, we need to make sure that they have updates and the latest features, functionality available. But more so, just to share your knowledge and experience like we've been doing today, like the community does every day, and like the conferences where anybody turns up and speaks help with as well. And be part of this amazing community. I think a few people have mentioned it already, but it's great to get together and see the difference that this project is making. In case it was ambiguous as to how you might do that, we are on Slack and Discord and Matrix and I'm going to say Twitter because I'm an old guy, and Mastodon, probably elsewhere. Obviously, we're on YouTube Live today as well. Hi. And a few other places. If you want to just sort of get stuck into the documentation that has been referenced, there's docs.fyne.io if you've never found it before. And there is a YouTube channel. Hey! There are lots of ways that you can get involved. Pretty much everything is in GitHub. The project itself, the source repository is called Fyne inside the Fyne-io organization, but everything else, the tutorials, the websites, it's all in there somewhere. Probably don't need to mention the apps listing once again. It's there, check it out, put your stuff up on there. There is a submit button on the website if you haven't found it before. And lastly of all, we absolutely rely on our sponsors. We're very much appreciative to Just Relate and Fyne Labs and the other excellent Fyne sponsors who have been part of making today possible. If you want to help us out, there's documentation, there's code, but there's also the chance that a little contribution to the funds helps to bring things together. Earlier, folk were asking about designers and other people that could come along to make the project more well-rounded. All of those things would be amazing if we could somehow pull that together. So if you've got other random ideas, get in touch. That would be fantastic. I think that is everything. I've had a fantastic day, very much enjoyed myself. Thank you everybody for joining us, and we'll see you next year somewhere in the United States. Now, sorry, that was the ultimate climax just for the final video. You got to leave it somewhere. But we do, like I said, have some time for questions and answers. It's sort of an ask anything. There are other people of the team here. I think we called out Tilo a couple of times, sorry, and thank you. A few others were hoping to be here, but unfortunately couldn't today. But we have got a little time for any questions that people have that they want to ask to the room or to me for a public answer. We are over. That's 4:30. I don't want to hold people back if they've got places to be, but I also understand that we've got refreshments not too far away. So if there's burning questions, we'll take them right now. If they're about the lightning talks, we can try and share them with our colleagues who are somewhat remote. Otherwise, yeah, we can just sort of chill back, grab a drink. I don't think anybody's running anywhere right away, but I'll take a couple questions just now. Yeah.
What's the diff between the Fyne cross-compile and the stuff that, what was his name, Nick White? Yeah, the stuff that he did. What's the comparison between that?
So what's the difference between Fyne Cross and the cross-compilation work that Nick was doing?
Yeah.
I think there's probably quite a few differences. I think that Nick's not available to answer that question for you, but my understanding is he's trying to integrate with a lot of different libraries that are platform dependent. So he was talking about the DLLs and the dynamic linking and the fun that is Apple's own way of solving this problem, and how do you pull them all into your final compiled binary, which is a very advanced, how do we make cross-compiling better? The Fyne Cross project currently works on a standardized development so that it is just the Go compiler and the C dependencies that Fyne relies upon. So it is taking your app with no additional dependencies and just cross-compiling it for you, dropping the result in the current directory. So integrating with additional libraries like the ALSA or Pulse Audio or something which has come up in conversation before. Is not possible with Fyne Cross unless you then build a custom container with the additional dependencies, and then you kind of have to do that across multiple platforms because the container has sort of hidden that away. So we're coming at different angles of the same complex problem, and ideally we can reconcile all of this, and folk are already looking at how the app metadata file could help to indicate what dependencies are required, because let's face it, an external audio or a Bluetooth driver, these are things that lots of apps are going to need, so we should be able to solve them in a standard way. And when this is working the way that we think it should, you'll never need to worry again, and probably the projects will come together in some way. Thanks.
Pardon if this is more of an uninformed question. I've seen a lot of UI elements so far, but something I've been missing is like a graphical interface if I wanted to produce a game, or maybe a graph or an audio. Is there something in there today? And if not, when can we expect something in the future?
So I guess the question is broadly, what's the capabilities of the lower level graphics side of things? Everything on screen is drawn using the primitives that we have. So if you've seen it, then your app can do it as well. Nothing is hidden away. The only private code is optimizations and things that you don't ever hopefully have to worry about. But that is fairly simple things, images, rectangles, lines, curved corners, text. The list has fallen out of my head, but it's not comprehensive yet. So if you're looking to draw arc paths, segments of a pie, all of those sorts of things, it's not currently possible. So in that situation, we recommend a rasterized graphics package for Go, like GG, for example. You can take it, make the pixels at the right resolution for your output device. So there's APIs to understand how many pixels are needed. So you can do that and then display it to screen. And it may or may not be performant depending on what you're doing. In terms of games specifically, there are possibly better libraries for building a game. Depending on the type of game you're building is going to give you different answers to that. Graphing is something that comes up. I think Rinaldi showed us one way that you can go. So if it's a line, point, potentially fill graph, that will be okay. But if you're trying to animate through curves and things like that, then probably the limitations are just a little bit, you're going to hit them before you get what you like trying to achieve. There are graphing packages. FC, I think, was probably the most comprehensive. That was presented a few years ago, so you can see the video that is built on top of a canvas abstraction that converts it from a user interface coordinate space to a plus and minus positive, negative X and Y coordinate space for graphing. And there's a whole package built on top of that, which is amusingly also cross toolkit. The guy has implemented it across multiple. Probably we'll see a graphing package emerge, possibly as part of FyneX or alongside it, but there's not really anything we could point to that goes, this is the graphing package you want to use. So it's quite handcraft at the moment for your application. Yeah, no bother. Any other? So I'm just checking a few. I think the YouTube guys have been awesome and waved a few times, but they don't seem to have any questions, which is like amazing. They seem to have let us off quite lightly. And there is another conference channel over there. No, everybody seems pretty chill. I suppose we could say, hey, the questions in here, they're really good. What's happening online? Maybe it's sunny online as well, and everybody's like.
I have a short one, maybe from the experience of having visited a couple of GopherCons, major conferences. What's the general feedback of people actually doing a lot of Golang, but maybe not doing UI? About Fyne? Do they know Fyne? Have they used it?
Yes, right, wow. That is, you might not realize, but probably quite a political question. So depending on why you're using Go and how long you've been using Go might influence what your opinion is of any graphical toolkit for building applications. It's changed over time as well, which is nice, in the favor of more variety of what Go is used for. It was obviously created as a systems language for backend and server management, that kind of thing. And that's amazing, it's fantastic at it, but I'm not going to plug any of my books here, but the first one was a comparison of graphical toolkits and how they fit well with Go, kind of justified that they exist and that Fyne should continue going on. This was about 2 years into the project. And it just is a really good language for this type of work. And a lot of people are agreeing with that. So we have piggybacked on the developer survey. So the official developer survey does capture how many people are doing this for apps, and they have found that it's sort of 8 to 10% of people are working on some kind of UI. We then did a follow-on one a few years ago in partnership with Gio, to reach out to a community that wasn't specifically the Go developer community, but the UI developer community or whoever was interested in this thing. We saw that it could be a lot higher. So we found that maybe it was, well, 18% at least of Go development could be app-based. But of course, both are sample sets, and you don't, like, somewhere between those two numbers is probably the truth. On the online communities for Go development in the general sense, typically the community maintainers have felt that graphics is not really the thing that it's built for, which is fair enough. And if somebody joined the room and goes, oh, I was looking to build this app, you know, I've got some questions, who can help? A few years ago, they might have said, oh, I mean, it's probably not really worth a lot of your time, but these projects exist. To, oh yeah, absolutely, well, you know, is it toolkit specific? There's these channels, otherwise it's an interesting thing, ask your question here, we'll direct you. So the community is moving forward. The reason I give you all of that before I answer the question about conferences is because conferences are curated much more so than online communities and any free to vote, get involved type of events. So we are finding that the community, the conferences are not quite so welcoming of graphical app talks. Now that might be because they don't think it's right. It might be because people like me just talk about their project and they don't want to hear somebody talk about their project. They want to hear about others, you know, share their experiences. It is changing. I think I mentioned earlier that we have had some kind of Fyne-based talk at all of the major Go conferences, bar Go Singapore, which we're working with them on. Go Lab is awesome. They allowed us to have a graphical UI table at the workshop last year, the hackathon dinner last year, and we're doing a workshop for them this year, so that's cool. And GopherCon UK hosted a user interface chat room, like physical space where people could go and just sort of share their thoughts about building graphical apps. So it's bubbling up, you know, there's a lot going on. Folk appreciate, I think, what it is, and we'll see more and more of it. But to some extent, a lot of conferences are put together to succeed as conferences, so the selection criteria is always going to be a bit different. So I mean, I love going to them. I desperately want more of this type of stuff to be presented, partly because I just like slides where there's lots of pretty things and you can look at a screenshot and understand how something has made that work. Long answer, sorry, but hopefully I answered your question.
It does. Yeah, just a small follow-up. So I worked with many Golang developers that had a lot of experience, probably not on the UI field, but when they see the need to write a UI app, they don't consider using Golang, which is the language that they are pro, to do that.
Yeah.
Which is confusing, and it's probably because the community itself, or the community of Golang in general, is not so welcoming. Or
it's why I think we've got a lot of work to do in spreading the word, showing both how fun and easy it is, but also the types of things that you can do. I've absolutely loved some of the lightning talks because they just show a thing that these guys are doing stuff in their spare time that helps their work be better with something that they've learned how to do themselves. It's pretty amazing. I think I saw one more question back there. No? Oh, I'm sorry. Just
a question I just wanted to add.
Oh, you're just
do it privately.
Oh, okay, okay. There was just briefly a question online, but I think, oh wow, Go community, I love this. There was a question online on YouTube Live, somebody answered it already, question redacted, everything's good. I can't tell you what the question was because they're happy it's all resolved and they've moved on. So I'm glad you got the answer you're looking for. A bit random. Any other questions in the room? Like we're definitely getting to time where we could sort of shut off the live stream. Any last burning one? No? Amazing, cool. Well, thanks everybody for joining us. Have a fantastic rest of your day, night, morning, wherever you are, whenever you are. hopefully we will see you at an event, a conference, or one of FyneConfs down the road. If you are somewhere over further towards the United States or Northern America, hopefully we see you there. Otherwise, online next time. And yeah, who knows where else actually? I have no idea where we're going. If you're somewhere and you want to help organize one of these events, that would be amazing. Give us a shout. And be well, everyone. Thanks.